Okay, so welcome to the first Need Environmental um, Educators and National Perspective first virtual conference for this autumn. And we will be welcoming, to start things off, Tom Walmsley from the Ministry of Eco-Education.
Thank you. And thank you. I think I can speak on behalf of our whole sector for pulling us all together. You've put together an amazing group this morning in terms of the speakers and the audience. And I hope Devon appreciate it. But it's very good for our sector on a national scale. When I saw the Jess and Rachel and Peter in the lineup, I thought you'd really rolled out the big guns. I appreciate going first because it looks like they stole good lines off me rather than the other way around. So I do have a presentation, don't worry. So I'm going to talk about Ministry of Eco-Education. If I share with you my screen, thumbs up just if you can see my slides. Cool. So Ministry of Eco-Education, if you haven't come across it before, it's a charity that supports schools to embed sustainability across their existing curriculum by weaving together some free resources and opportunities for teachers from hundreds of organizations in order to save them time. We're now engaged with 3,000 schools across the country, and we aim to try to get to every school in the country. So what's our story? I feel like if we're talking about best practice, it's important to understand the why behind any kind of product. And our story is really important for a number of reasons, which I'll come on to explain. But the hidden reason why we like to keep the history of our product near the surface is because we've decided that our main approach to schools is to ask them what their story is. How far along their sustainable journey have they got? And we try to keep our resources so flexible that we can then help them make it fit to suit their needs. So our story started with Dale Vince, who is the kind of guy who will create something to overcome an obstacle on a national or international scale, regardless of the odds. And that's not necessarily because he's wealthy. It's also just an attitude. And it's got a great story in his new book, Manifesto, which I enjoyed reading. He spent a long time as a traveler and then decided that what would help solve problems around the world, especially with climate change, and decided to set up the first ever in the world supply of green electricity to homes, which was Ecotricity. And then he set up Forest Green Rovers, the football club, which you'll see comes up relevant quite a few times in our talk. And they are really leading light, really extraordinary in that they're doing well financially, not brilliantly in terms of goals, but they're doing fine financially. And they're completely vegan, and their pitch is organic. It's got no plastic in it. And they're about to build a new stadium made of wood. Really extraordinary. Green Britain Foundation is the charitable arm of Ecotricity. And that covers a whole range of things, which again you'll see in a minute are quite helpful for us, including one product they've launched called Sky Diamonds, where they pull carbon dioxide out of the air to make nice diamond rings, some decent bling. And they soon hope to have some hydrogen powered planes for passengers zooming around England. And then of course the Sea Shepherd, he got fed up that whaling was still going on, so he just bought them a really nice new boat. So the rest of our story, I think I might even stop sharing because I think it would be good to look at some of the problems that we face and some facts. And I thought it might be more interesting to see face to face when we do some facts. So the problem that Dale put to us was that the government clearly aren't going to do an environmental curriculum that would be statutory across the whole country. And so we looked at the problems, and they've been well surveyed by Teach the Future, UE's Catapults project, and Force of Nature. And I think someone needs to do these stats at the start of a meeting like this. We know that from these surveys, 8% of teachers feel that they have received inadequate. 8% feel that they've got adequate training to teach about climate change. And 60% of students want to be taught better. They want more outdoor education. They want more training for the teachers. And young people often put their eco-anxiety down to lack of effort from adults. To some extent, that's primary, and the actual problem of climate change is secondary. And so if we're avoiding talking about it in the classroom as the educators, as the adults in the room, are we effectively doing the same thing? What's also interesting for Ministry of Eco, as I'll come to explain, is that 70% of students think that big business decisions are really vital. 85% wanted to get a job related to the environment, but only 39% feel like they're qualified to do that. So what we set out to do was to create an ethos where we're embedding sustainability across education, which is even bigger than just the classroom. And this should help to ensure that our resources are in the hands of teachers who feel empowered. We call them activators. And this might involve their built environment being much more sustainable, so that they've got things to show and talk about to the children that the schools have done. And it might be much more cross-curricular than they're used to with a topic to show kids that this affects every part of our life, including sport, as you see keeps coming up. So to help spread this ethos, we work with teachers from Key Stage 1, 2, and 3. And now we're working with some graduate courses and a couple of universities with trainee teachers. But through the Green Britain Foundation, we'll also be able to collaborate with businesses and sport initiatives. I'll show you in a second. The next big sport initiative is the Green Football Weekend, and non-violent activists. There, I've said it. We take inspiration from non-violent activists. This adds another dynamic, and it makes the environmental education that we talk about a bit more colourful, but more relatable to the world around us, and more likely to suit people's interests. So we want to get to every school in the country, and to gain traction with that, what we've done is worked really closely with a growing number of multi-academy trusts and local authorities and hundreds of organizations who also contribute to this sector, mainly through their resources, but that's a two-way relationship. And the local authorities, I'll show you later on, some of them have got so on board that they've created a wrap around the Ministry of Eco Resources with local examples, and then that's spreading out to every school under their authority. I also wanted just to finish off on the ethos before I show you the resources. Again, more about the why. If school communities are all aware that there's difficult futures for young people, do we want to be, as the educators, supporting a fearsome or a desirable future? We don't want them just to visualize a more sustainable future. We want to encourage them with real-world data and challenges and solutions. And we've put links to all those in our resources so that we can keep it real with the challenges and solutions from the real world. And I love the quote, "Magic follows attention." I think it originally came from the world of magicians. But by making it easier for teachers to focus and engage on sustainable education right across their curriculum, then they're more likely to feel positive as they feel more empowered, more upskilled, more knowledgeable, and they're more likely to picture a desirable, sustainable future. So if I share with you again, so here's some of the resources that we've been pulling in from just out of the 180 organizations. There's a few here to show you the range. Green Football Weekend is the 3rd to the 5th of Feb, and there's going to be loads of resources coming out, and we will make sure that you guys know all about those because UKSSN have now sponsored it. So the same people who sponsor us are sponsoring them. What we worked on to start with is that about 15 primary schools and about 10 secondary schools with some brilliant head teachers. I think 1 or 2 are in the room. And the idea was that we would work with them, collaborate with the teachers to build something that we knew would be suitable for schools. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel with a new curriculum. We wanted something that was flexible and inspiring, and was pulling in from the good resources that are already out there. These teachers helped us with the schemes of work. So they're not exactly downloadable lesson plans, but each scheme, as you'll see in a minute, has got loads of different activities which could be a lesson. And then we wanted to try and get over 22, 23 hundreds or thousands of schools on board. We have 2,700 primary schools engaged. We can see them using the site, some a lot more than others, but those ones are engaged, and about 300 secondary schools. And then by 2025, we want to be working with half the primary schools in the country. And for the secondary schools, we've now got some funding to keep the Young Green Britain Challenge going. And that's where schools put together some ideas to create a solution for an environmental problem. And they get support from industry, like STEM would support it, but it's coming through Green Britain Foundation. It's a very similar idea. And then there's winners and there's finance to support them turning their idea into reality. So here is the product now that we're getting into. Our resources have been grouped in different ways. One way is to look at it through the 7 pillars: transport, energy, food, nature, society, waste, and water. And Sandy there was just doing a quick ruffle. He wants to say hi. He is here because, can you still see him on this new little mirror? He keeps nature in mind for us. So he's been trained, as some of you might know, to watch the audience and spot anybody that's not thinking about nature-based solutions the whole time. And in a room, he flies at them and targets them. But luckily on Zoom, he can't do that. But he will tell me afterwards anybody who's not thinking about a nature-based solution to a problem. So these are our pillars or our themes. Under those, there's about 10 questions. So the whole thing is question-led. We're hoping that keeps it future-proof. We see the young teachers we work out coming out of teacher training love a question-led style. So if we just look at the back end, very sorry, couple of boring slides, but this is a quick way to give you an overview before we look at the colourful website. So the inquiry questions are like this, very open and not too hard-hitting, not suggesting that you need to massively change your lifestyle. But they should stimulate some thought. By the way, this was supposed to be a whale, but my line looks more like an amoeba. This is my pathetic nature-based solution. This one's an aubergine. So the key concepts are related to the national curriculum. So we're obviously trying to make it easy and use the same language. So the key concept for each question is clear on the website. I'm just showing you this way because it's quicker. This one is the sea cucumber. And this is showing you that there is a key stage in mind for each of the questions, but we're really finding that because we kept it flexible, people are using them across key stage 1, 2, and 3, regardless of what we've put in this group, in this column. And then the outcomes, you got to guess what this animal is. They include things that are back in the real world. So nothing against school assemblies, but we wanted people to start getting used to the idea of being activators, not activists necessarily, but a short film or a poster fair could be in the village hall, a drama performance, a podcast easy to share online. So these kind of things ideally would come back into the school community or outside of the school grounds at least. Obviously, it's a bumblebee, obviously. So our website looks like this. When you first arrive, Jess, can you give me a thumbs up if you can now see the website? Okay, cool. Let's do it this way then. So I've logged in under a dummy login that you guys are all welcome to have a quick look around. It's called Minchinhampton because this was the first school that Dale approached to say, do you think this would be a good idea? And the guy, Nick Moss, was absolutely instrumental in being open-minded and encouraging us to make it happen. So from here, you can scroll down, and at the bottom, there's loads of blogs coming through all the time with updates on what we're doing, and lots and lots of videos. The videos are also just streamed and listed on our YouTube channel. So the school map, for fun, you can see yourself on there by zooming in. Find your school as soon as you sign up. Our partners we talked about before, there's 180 of those, including Thoughtbox, and their great system of their ethos is very aligned with ours. And their triple well-being aspect is something we need to build in to what we're doing here. I know Jess, I think, is it Jess speaking from Natural History Museum about nature parks? We're building that into our work with under nature questions. And our resources are often paralleled with UKSSN. So Rachel Manning is going to talk later about UKSSN, but we often are going to empower teachers in a school, but make it clear that their students could be empowered by joining UKSSN. So they work quite nicely. We're targeting the teachers and they're targeting the students. It's very, very easy to put the two together. So, for example, if we dive into a common one, plastic is a common one that people often have as a theme in their classroom projects or theme or curriculum anyway. And so if you look here, if I scroll down, you can see there are 5 questions under the plastic theme or pillar. If we click on the first one, you can see here that under my pretend login, we've completed, if you look at these ticks, all the activities or lesson plans. And at the top, you can see how many sessions it is, which could be a lesson or activity if it's in PSHE. The key concept linked to the national curriculum is action. Key stage we are targeting. The key text is often a novel, and it can often be non-factual, again, to try and encourage the cross-curricular. And then the national curriculum links, which we put there, but we totally appreciate that teachers know their national curriculum links inside out. So if the teacher is feeling uninspired or uninformed, then they can look and see if they feel like they could get on top of these key ideas. And then there are loads of links to resources all the way through our schemes of work. So if the teacher wanted to, they could watch all the videos and read all the resources in advance of an activity and feel empowered straight away. The further opportunities are often for the teachers so that they can upskill themselves further. Sometimes they're for the students. So if I come back out of this one, come back up to curriculum, maybe have a look in nature, close that up so you can see this one's got 9 questions. Who lives near me? Is a big one for key stage 1 and early years. And our key texts here are "If the World Were 100 People" by Jackie McCann. I think most of you know that one. And the key ideas: biodiversity is a variety of plant and animal life, a place as a space for stories and meaning. Throughout history, people have moved. So we try to keep not just about we try to keep social justice involved and the human society so that it can be aligned with the curriculum they're already working on, as opposed to hardcore climate change and the eco crisis. We don't want it to be something separate. I don't quite know how many of these ideas to go through. We could look at as many as you like afterwards. You can see that transport's got 7 questions, energy's got 9 questions, and each of those will have roughly 8 activities or schemes of work underneath them. If I go back to my presentation, I wanted to talk about how we make that accessible for people. And we've been running teacher workshops where we put out to the contacts we've got across the city, or we go to a multi-academy trust and ask them to pull their teachers together. So the ones I've done were at UE with 50 teachers, and I'm planning one in Ashton Gate in New Year, 50 teachers. And I'm hoping to do one with the Wild Tribe group outside in Belmont. And you'll all be invited, just like taking Jess's style of doing something local, but inviting everybody. What's also worked well, thanks to Northumberland County Council, is that we can approach a council that have got at least some climate targets and ask them if they would like help with their environmental education and rolling something out that will cost them nothing. And we've actually we come up with some questions for them to answer with local examples. And then if they are happy to put some effort into that, we're happy to help them create a jacket around our current work. Northumberland County Council work closely with Merrill, who's one of the other people in our team, Merrill Batcher, and they set up a whole resource. There's a pack that you can download that's available to anybody with loads of local relevance. They've sent it out to all the teachers, and they're getting Merrill to do teacher training. Again, she's going into schools to talk about Ministry of Eco-Education and UKSSN at the same time. Some of their questions, just to give you an example, are things like, can we use old mines to heat Blythe with some district heating under the energy question? Where do emissions come from? More from agriculture or from transport in Northumberland? How could Northumberland decarbonise its transport? The other thing that we've done to keep it cross-curricular was to come up with some principles. So it's question-led as a pedagogy, but we also wanted to keep these golden threads running throughout everything. Inquiry as a learning through discovery and experience, adventure as an attitude to the world, balance between humans and the rest of nature, like I just talked about, and systems thinking, seeing the complexity connections in the world rather than just trying to solve things individually, because we know climate and environment are intrinsically linked with everything. To make it easier for people to get on board, we created these 5 steps. So you start with a community consultation, which sounds grand, but actually it's just some fun surveys. I can show you some here. So the surveys are for students and for staff, and they're quite light-hearted. Like, what book would you find most inspiring to help teach a lesson? Someone in the world, the character who you think should be part of the eco-curriculum? What film, TV program stopped you in your tracks, inspired you to talk to others about it? So it gets more and more about environmental issues as it goes down, but that I find really helps start conversations in the staff room, and then we're on to a winner. So the ones for students are really fun. That I haven't found any students who can't answer them. They're more about how they feel like they connect with nature. And step 2 then is to try and map onto the existing curriculum what questions would work well with the projects they've already got. So you could look at, we also have all the 65 questions in one long list, and you'd be welcome to that. We like people to map their school grounds, and this helps link into what Natural History Museum I'm talking about in a minute. And we offer staff training if people can group staff together for free anytime. We like people to have a launch event. We try to get some pictures from that on our site. And then if they have any reflections or feedback on it, we definitely want to hear that. And we often change at the end of each month what our resources have on board. And then we like people to share it with their peers, certainly within their school. Hopefully they've worked with their other year group teachers or their subject teachers already. But also people who've got positions of responsibility, like the bursar who might be thinking about solar panels, or the PA who might be wanting to know what to spend their money on next. After the first year, we did a survey. We had about 50 schools by then, but they all found that there was an increase in nature connection in their community. There was more proactive around environmental behaviour. They felt more positive about engaging with the local community. Teachers all felt more supported. The young people felt more knowledgeable, more understanding, and there was more positivity in their language. There was more sense of hope. The teacher confidence went up by 71% because they were able to look at the resources, including videos and downloadable PDFs, very easily, because they'd all been pulled together before they had to teach it. Because they felt more empowered, and because there was real world information and solutions involved, the sense of hope for teachers went up, and the sense of connection with nature during their classroom time went up. And the Nature Connection Index for UK is around 61 at the moment. In those 50 schools, our Nature Connection Index from that form that a lot of you might have done was 67. We know we needed to get it to 70 in our community and in the nation for a more sustainable future, but it was at 85 when we redid the forms after the first year. So this is the end of my presentation. If you go to ministryofeco.org, I can put it in the chat. Then you can sign up on this first page, and you will get an email from us and a login that will be free forever. There will never be a paywall around it. That's a stipulation from our funder. And finally, when you sign up, we've got a digital badge that you can put on your website, and we're thinking of having plaques for the activator teachers to put up on their classroom wall, a thin wooden plaque. So, Jess, I'm good for my presentation. I might even stop sharing. I can see loads of questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. I'll just take you quickly through the questions. I think everybody will agree that was really interesting. I mean, it's so great to see so many schools engaging with it and to have kind of comprehensive style of integrating environmental themes into the curriculum. Very much needed. I think we'll all be on the same page with that. So in terms of the questions, first one, how do you become a partner? You listed some of the partner organisations.
Yeah, just get in touch. We're lucky that we don't have a funder hanging over our shoulder checking everything. We can just keep communicating with anybody who's interested. We're mainly trying to support teachers rather than perfect the resources. But once a month we do an update. I'll probably put you on to Meryl. If that person knows Meryl Batcher, go straight to her, or to Paul Turner, who created it all. But you're welcome to contact me. Shall I put my email in here?
Yeah, please do.
See the stats. The stats are in the chat.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, so I had a couple. How do you go about engaging schools in the first place? We all know and work with schools, and it's challenging to get schools on board when they're restricted for funds and time. How have you found?
Good question. So a couple of different ways. So by bringing, Paul had been in the sector for a decade, so had Meryl. I've been working hard on networks in the Southwest. So we started with the schools that we knew would be engaged. And then if they were happy, if they found them inspiring enough, they wanted to support them across the mat that they worked under, and support their own colleagues, they would help that grow. And as soon as we had some mats that were already asking all their teachers to be aware of these resources and try and build them in over time, then we could go to other multi-academy trusts and say these ones are finding the resources very useful. And then we could go to local authorities and saying, do you realize there's a number of mats under your local authority using these resources and finding them really helpful because it saves them time and they'll always be free. Then the local authorities got interested too. So we started with schools that we knew would be interested. And then we went to people who support those schools rather than trying to go cold turkey to loads and loads of schools.
Yeah, I think the low-hanging fruit is first is a good approach.
That's the expression.
Bobby's got a question. How is Eco Ministry funded, and is it free to schools?
Yeah, nice. I don't mind that question many times. It's entirely funded by Dale Vince through the Green Britain Foundation, and he stipulated that it must always be free to schools. We do actually have lists of teacher training and other resources, some of which have a cost, but they're not in the resources that we've just been talking about. They're in a separate list for people who want added extra. We're just about to put out a blog about that.
Okay, thank you. Rosa says, Tom, do you encourage schools to work alongside local community action groups when working through the programme?
Yes. So the outcomes we talked about, where they might have a poster campaign or a blog, the idea is that they all lend themselves to doing something outside of school in the community. Ideally, action groups are going to be the low-hanging fruit there, aren't they? So we're not stipulating, because that's quite a big ask for a school that hasn't done that before, but we try to make it lends itself to that. And then whenever we do a workshop, we always look for local groups to co-host it with us. Sometimes they take over. We don't get a word in edgeways, but the idea is that we're showing that putting our money where our mouth is, and bringing in paying expenses for a local group to come in and join us.
Great. So I think I'm going to make this the last question, unless anyone has any burning ones which they want to put in the chat. What have been the biggest challenges or kind of pushbacks from teachers or schools in general?
Could you just define if that's about climate change education generally, or about challenges of using these resources?
Either, really. I guess your talk was more about implementing the resources. So, has there been much pushback on people? People like to do what they've always done, and change can be kind of tricky for you.
So in the schools that are not clicking through the website, they're already registered but not clicking that much. What we found is that nobody had the time, couple of hours only, to go through those 60 questions and just point out to their colleagues which ones are exactly aligned with the projects they're already doing. That first step seems to get rid of the hurdle. And if no one in the schools had the time, literally hours, just a few hours, it doesn't need to be much more than that to get people lined up with a couple of questions each. Then it's tricky, because then every teacher's got to go through all the questions. But certainly if the deputy head is in charge of the curriculum, then that's great. If they just spend a couple of hours to get people onto the first rung with the first activity. So that, I think, is the main issue, is time. And because they know that we can get free teacher training from us, and they can look at all the links in advance, they're not so worried about how to teach it. It's just
Thank you. So Libby's got a last one. What evaluation methods do you find most useful?
So the results I just showed you from our first survey, we spent quite a long time working on those questions, so we're going to keep using those. We find if we can find out whether the teacher's confidence has gone up and whether conversations around the future are more positive with the pupils, and their sense of nature connectedness, those three are the main indicators of whether our why is working, our ethos is working. And then it's quite easy to assess how many times they're clicking on different pages. We don't necessarily see that many downloads, because a lot of it is just streaming video. We don't have downloadable lessons. We wanted people to have to create them themselves a little bit. And so we can just see the level of activity from a particular school, and that gives us an idea of how proactive they are.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Sorry, can I add one last question that I had sent directly to me?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Someone has asked, can we join as an organisation that is not a school to explore the materials and to support teachers that we know are working within schools?
Yes, please, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have lots of logins for people who are not teachers, who might be able to help spread the word in some way.
Is any of this happening in Devon?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been with Andaris Trust. We had all their eco clubs together, and we had a big session just last month. No, I think Devon is almost too far ahead. I'm finding they've got a lot of their own resources, their own things going on. Especially, it's really impressive done.
There's still a lot of work to do. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate you being here. And I'm sure all of us will kind of go and search out more about the Ministry of Eco Education.
I'd like you to look out too for my friend Elsa Kent. I'm not sure you have time for her to speak. She's based in Devon, but she's just come back from East Africa, where she's doing the same thing single-handedly, where she's just finished an eco curriculum that she wrote from scratch for a whole school, Kikunkomi, and now she's been asked to spread that curriculum across down the coast in East Africa, which is really exciting. And she's based in Devon, so hopefully you guys will get to see and hear more about her.
Yeah, brilliant. And we'd love to have Elsa along for a webinar in the new year. That'd be great. Thanks so much, Tom.
Anyone's welcome to email me any questions after this too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Okay, so next we have and bye-bye, beautiful bird. And you too, Beth. And then so next we are very lucky to have Yogi to come forward and talk from the Natural History Museum about the about the National Education Nature Park. Yogi, this is the first time I've actually sort of met you, so thank you and welcome. It looks very sunny and beautiful where you are.
It's almost blinding, but I'm going to be very stripy as a result, but that's okay. That's
Fine.
The slivers of my face will show my enthusiasm, I'm sure. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely, please do. Again, any questions, please do just put into the chat and we'll ask afterwards. Thank you, Yogi. You've got about 20 minutes.
Brilliant, lovely. I'm going to actually set a timer. I hope that's okay. I just I get a bit stuck otherwise. Right. There we go. I feel like that's going to help. So, hi, I'm Yogi. I work at the Natural History Museum, and I'm here to talk to you about the National Education Nature Park. And I come with a slight ulterior motive that I'll tell you about shortly. So, I guess first question is, who am I? Why am I here? I am Yogi Nagam. I work as the Projects and Partnerships Officer at the Natural History Museum with the wonderful Jess Tipton and the rest of our brilliant partnership. So this project has been commissioned by the Department for Education, and it's run by the Natural History Museum, the Royal Horticultural Society, Royal Society, and you can see our other project partners there who've contributed loads of fantastic resources and time and ideas on how to support schools with our programme. I worked in hospitality for about 8 years. So I worked in bars and pubs and cafes, and then I volunteered as a tutor for a while, and I did half an engineering apprenticeship and saw this job and thought, that is what I want to be working on. So that's how I ended up here. So perhaps a little bit of a roundabout way into environmental education, but I'm really passionate about what we do. So the background is to this project is stuff that I suspect all of you guys will already know, which is that the UK is actually one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, and that there are like reports that set a precedent for education being like a key point at which we can change that in our country. And we also know things that about our access to green spaces and what it does for well-being for young people and for adults. And you know, the Department for Education also have ideas around addressing STEM skill shortages, although that is definitely not the only thing that we're aiming to do in our project. And so that's what was the background to our project, and it helped us to develop 3 overall aims for the nature park, and that's that we want young people and children to develop a connection to nature, we want them to understand the threats that nature is facing, and we want them to feel like they can do something about it. And yeah, so we've developed a program where we want to see biodiversity gain across our educational estate by helping schools to make interventions on their green spaces that are co-created by young people and the people who are on those school sites. We want to see development of green skills by encouraging people and helping to support people to teach outdoors, to teach honestly about climate change and issues to do with biodiversity crisis. We want young people to exhibit pro-environmental behaviours. And as Tom previously said, like that's quite a wide umbrella of what we consider to be pro-environmental behaviours. And we want to improve well-being, for young people. And so we have started the Nature Park project with the hope that we can deliver those programme aims. And we launched on the 4th of October. You can see our map on this slide of, actually it's a bit out of date now, we've got even more nature park sites who've been able to map their school boundaries, but we've got schools from all around the country who've signed up to our programme, who are mapping the boundaries of their school sites and will be taking part in activities that allow them to map the habitats on those school sites and like design changes for those sites with young people. So we want in this project, in the nature park, for students to take the lead. We want to create a network of spaces between school estates or education estates around the country. And we want to like record the biodiversity in these places. We also think it's a way that we can help young people to make a collective difference, but that they can visualize on our nature park map, which is on our website, which I'll take you through shortly. I'd love to do one of our activities with you now if people have a couple of minutes. So if you close your eyes, whether that's because of the glare of the sun or just to imagine, and I want you to think about the school site that you have or the outdoor space in your education space. And I'm going to ask you the following questions. I want to know, how would you like it to make you and the young people you work with feel? In that space, what would people be able to do? What would you like people to be able to see? What do you want to be able to hear? And what would it be like for nature? And you don't have to share your thoughts at all, but if you do feel inclined, it'll probably put a big smile on my face. So feel free to do that in the chat. But this is a very short activity, which is actually on our website as one of our resources to do with young people. It's not a super long activity, but it allows them to reflect on what they'd like to see and hear and feel. And I hope that what you guys see is a space that's really positive for your young people, for yourselves, and for the nature around you guys. Hopefully inviting lots of little critters in. So now I'm going to take you through our website in a little more detail. I'm hoping that you can see this as I do it. Are you able to see my website, the website there on your screens? 1 second. I'll share again and then it will do it right. Okay, there we go. So you should now be able to see our website, I hope. And on our website, we've got a couple of different things that I'd love to bring to your attention. So on our homepage, you can see the current number of schools that have been able to map their school sites, which is a 5-minute activity for teachers. And as we zoom in, as you can see, London and some city areas are absolutely glowing, but we are hoping that by speaking to you guys, we'll be able to help support you and inspire you to join us in Devon. So this shows the schools that have been able to join and map their school sites, but we've actually had over 1,100 educators from different schools sign up. So that's our homepage, and on our website you can see our basic process, which is broken down into a 5-step process, which involves getting to know your space with your young people, identifying opportunities for improvement with them, making decisions about what you guys would like to do with your space, making that change happen, and recording the impact of that change for nature and for yourselves. And there's more information on each of these on this page. And the reason I bring this to your attention is because on our resources page, a lot of the resources that we've designed or been able to collate from our partners are like fit in with one of those 5 steps in order to help create a flexible approach for people who'd like to use 1 or 2 activities with their students, or create a process that you can follow that offers a bit more structure to carry out the aims of the nature park, which are to make changes to improve your spaces for biodiversity and your young people. So on our resources page, we've got quite a large library. We've got a getting started area where the activity that you guys just did, write a vision statement, is written out for use with young people. There's activities on trying to get people to join the nature park, whether that's your SLT or schools in your area. There's information on giving assemblies on the nature park, and some of our educator guidance around nature-based discovery, health and safety while teaching outdoors, and lots of other themes. I'd really recommend having a read of the nature-based discovery, as it's written to help support teachers who feel really confident or not confident at all with taking groups of students outside. We've then also got other sections which include exploring your school site, including our flagship activity, the Hidden Nature Challenge, which has been really, really popular with schools, where you get your young people, students and learners outdoors taking photos of discoveries they make of nature on your school site, and you submit them to our national map. I'll send a link in the chat so people can take a look at that. For submission to the national map, and I'm currently loving looking through those on a weekly basis and picking out my favorites. We also offer activities that will allow you and your young people to start planning for nature on your school site. So there's information on how you might plan a project, and my personal favorite, the ideas for improvement cards that you can do with young people that show them how different interventions will have different effects on their school site. We've also got further down here resources on sessions to do with well-being and mental health. Some are creative, like design a plant. Some are activities like sound mapping that involve just being outside and listening to your area, listening to your school site, which we've had a lot of really wonderful feedback on. We've also got subject-specific resources that have been quality assured and put together by our wonderful head of curriculum resources, Amy Strachan. She's been absolutely fantastic putting these together. And that's how our website is looking at the moment. You can register to join for an account. And the reason that you might want to do that is it allows you to take part in our mapping activities and gives you access to a dashboard. Mine looks a little bit different to the way that yours will. You would see a map of your own school in this area, and it would highlight activities that you've marked as started, so you can see what you've done with your students. So that's what our website looks like. I'm going to share a new thing again. I'm going to go back to my slides. And I'll pass around the slides later on, but I'll be quite quick going through this because we've not got loads of time. We've got a bit more in-depth information on our 5-step cycle here, letting you know which activities and green skills you'd gain from different resources on our website. I'll just quickly go through these. They've all been tested out with, the ones that we've designed have been tested out with Pathfinder schools. And so they've been refined over quite a period of time to make sure that they work in school settings. So far, we are hoping that schools can help us to explore how our making change happen and recording change sections work. And on the 30th of November, we have some habitat mapping resources becoming available on our website that have been designed by the Natural History Museum science teams on how you can map different habitats that exist on your school sites, which will then allow you to inform decisions about how to improve the spaces on your school site. I'm going to take you to our last slide and then hopefully answer a load of questions and ask how we can reach Devon a bit better than we have so far. So I would encourage people to register just because it allows you to gain access to the site boundary mapping, and on the 30th to our biodiversity mapping resources that require a login to match up to your school site so that you can do it specifically. It allows you to keep track of what you're doing and give us loads of feedback on what you enjoy so that we can improve the programme over time. Are there any questions? I'll leave it on this slide and then answer anything anyone has.
Thank you so much, Yogi. That's really insightful because there's been loads of talk of the National Education Nature Park, and really good to kind of see how it works in practice. There were some brilliant thoughts on the chat about that kind of visioning exercise, and I know that we at Planet and People also have a kind of visioning exercise where we get kids to think about their healthy environmental future of 50 years time, and then they write it on a postcard and we put it in a time capsule, and we get so many sort of creative answers, and it's just sort of always really inspiring. So it's good just to kind of tap into that
visions of the future.
Yeah, sort of thinking forward of what they want, what they hope it to be like, and that kind of gives an element of positivity.
Exactly.
There are some questions. Let me look at the chat here. Hayley asks, can you register as an educator on your site if you're not linked to a specific school?
So at the moment, we require registration on our website to be done via a URN, and that's the Department of Education unique registration number.
Okay.
Associated with your education setting, and that is in order to be able to link people who are registering up to like the correct map when they're using our mapping resources. We are, as the program develops, going to be exploring having non-teacher login, but that's being scoped out at the moment. So at the moment, you do require a URN to register on our website, but all of the other resources that are not habitat mapping or requiring of the mapping resources, the digital tools, can be accessed for free on our resources page on our website. I'll pop a link in.
Okay, that's really useful. Thank you. So I think you answered Lucy's question as well, really. So you can register on that part. If you could send the link, that would be wonderful for resources.
Could we help schools map their own grounds, was a question from Lucy. Yeah, I think so. The way that the activities around habitat mapping have been designed they're designed that a teacher who has not much experience or confidence being outdoors identifying different types of nature could do it with their young people. But I think that any support is welcome. I think we're aware that actually it needs to be someone who is part of a school doing the mapping for their school, because they are going to be the people that know their site. But I think support is something that's definitely appreciated, especially when taking on like a new activity or something to do with teaching outdoors or taking young people to do biodiversity mapping in this way.
Thank you so much, Yogi. We really appreciate you being here. Amazingly, we are running to time, and it means that we have got a little bit of time, which potentially we can have a bit of discussion about, and we can actually hear some of your voices. So I suggest we use this time. We've got approximately sort of 20 minutes, really, which we can just think about the kind of themes that we've come across so far, or anything additionally. So one thing which I think is really important is that, you know, how can we collaborate? How can we keep doing these sorts of things, and how can our network support these initiatives better in Devon? So I wonder if we could use that as a question, is how can our network help initiate these and get them going in Devon? So if anybody would like to come forwards, it would be really useful, so I didn't have to speak for 20 minutes.
I mean, I'd love to just put a word in from the nature park quickly.
Go for it.
So I think one way that this network and networks in Devon could help us is, I guess, just taking some time on our website, understanding the program, and being able to, I guess, using your own minds to make your mind up about how you feel about the program. But an enthusiastic recommendation from someone local to you is often received much better than some random program that's happening nationally and not just specifically in Devon. So that's one way in which I know it, like, if you reflect on our program and think it's something that would work in Devon, it would be much appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of really useful, and partly why we've got this conference is it's important to have one, I always think, to have one foot in what's going on locally and one foot in what's going on nationally, and actually the kind of gravitas and the excitement of Natural History Museum goes part of the way, and actually having that understanding on the ground can really help too. So perhaps there's a way that our members can work together with you to engage those schools, and then kind of like spread the word. If you do have a question, I can see Jeanette, you've got your hand up. Is there anybody else who? Jeanette, you go ahead, and then if we can use the hand up thing facility on Zoom, that'd be great.
I just trying to sort of open up and get Devon on the map with these. I think from my experience leading science is that as a classroom teacher, we get so many emails, and it's having that opportunity to get teachers together to say, look, these are the platforms. So it's almost providing through a network. I know there's the primary science across the Southwest, we get together termly and share resources. It's having a platform like that, so that if the teachers have a 5-minute, this is the website, this is what it looks like, these are the resources, that once they've actually seen it beyond an email and a link, that then opens the door. So that there's almost a sense of fear of going into this rabbit hole of all of these resources, whereas I think if someone can bring, even if it's within a trust or a local community, to say these resources, and takes them on that first step, that makes then a massive difference for them to then say, right, well, that's been held up as, you know, high quality, really enriching, it's accessible, it's easy, we can do this, and then they will take it forward.
Absolutely, thanks, Jeanette. Okay, we've got a few hands up now. Elsa, I think you were first.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to say firstly, like, thanks so much for doing this. It's awesome to hear this happening, and thanks, Tom, for the introduction. And if anyone wants to talk about what's going on in Kenya with regards to this stuff, then just get in touch. I'll write some information on that and put it in the chat. But I am actually based in Devon and on a farm down here. And we're doing some really interesting stuff to do with linking farms to schools, and there's some brilliant funding from the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, which enables farmers to host 25 visits per farm per year. And so we work with lots of schools in Plymouth and across Devon, bringing them to the farm. And I'm just about to set up this project, expanding that program and making it more formal and trying to make it more than 25 days a year. And I think it's a really exciting combination, linking farms to schools. You know, we've got a school right on the edge of the farm here, and if we can link every school to a farm somehow, and that could be, if the farmers are resourced and funded to facilitate that kind of experience, then that could really be great, you know, because so much of the time environmental education doesn't have space to be able to really do it in an immersive way. And we're surrounded by farms, you know, it's most of this country is farmland. So yeah, I think just exploring that area is a great next step, maybe, and something. If you want to talk more about it, then get in touch. I'd love to.
Absolutely. Also in Devon, sort of 70% of our land is farmland, so it's really a critical sort of area to engage with. At Planet and People, we've done a little bit of work with the AOMBs to kind of connect farmers and farms and schools. And I know that FIPL is also a kind of good good source. Also, I was speaking to somebody from the Country Trust, who I think don't work in Devon, but in other areas of the country, are doing some kind of exploration between connecting farms and schools, just like you said. So there's lots going on there, and it'd be really good to kind of get our minds together and see how we can sort of engage.
I'd love to do that, Jess. Just a little thing to add on that is FIPL's brilliant. We're just doing a grant application at the moment to set up an osprey project here as part of the educational outreach, because we're lucky enough on this farm to have ospreys visiting every year.
Amazing.
So amazing. I'm completely obsessed with them. But yeah, so through that, what I really wanted to say is that's really incentivizing farmers to shift towards more regenerative practice through the educational kind of spin on things, because there is decent funding there, and there's lots of opportunities. So that is actually incentivizing this kind of whole other ball game to start shifting, with farmers going, actually, we want to do environmental education, but if our fields just look like barren wastelands, who's going to want to come and get environmental education and nature-based immersive experiences there? So there's another kind of incentive there too.
Absolutely. Farm-wise, there's also something to look up, and is a good event to be part of. Okay, Daisy, I think you were next. Daisy, you've got your hand up. Okay, we'll go on to Nikki.
Hi, I just wanted to say for the National Nature Parks, because we have got an RHS garden in Devon, Rosemore, like when as that project gets rolled out, there is conversation about having an activity that the schools that we have on site could do at Rosemore to then replicate and go back and do in their own ground. So that might be something useful to support with that project. I don't know if Naga knows about that plan or not, because it's all quite sort of, some things are linked and some things are not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I think I'd put you in touch with Sam Hartley from the RHS team, just so that you can link up on that, because that sounds fantastic, and like it would be like the perfect link into Nature Park for a lot of schools. And I know, because they've been working out of RHS Bridgewater, that they might have some resources or posters or things that you can use automatically. That would be perfect for the garden.
Yeah, I know, that's cool. No, at our education meeting last week, with all the education officers across the RHS, that was something that we talked about, is what activity we're going to be doing on site to support the national project. So hopefully that will help engage some of the schools in Devon when that activity is made.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, that's super exciting.
Cool. I can't work out how to turn my video on, so sorry that you can't see me.
That's okay. It's lovely to meet you.
Don't worry. Yeah, great to see these kind of connections starting to forge through this. Daisy, are you there? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. But if you can you type your question in the box? So we've got a few, there's lots of people from all sorts of different organisations. So if we've got a few more minutes left, about 10 minutes. So if anybody wanted to kind of share anything from their projects, which is relevant, or Tom, if you wanted anything to add to your presentation, then please do use this space. Daisy, have you got a question in the chat there? Oh, Daisy's having technical issues. I knew there would be some. I mean, you can't run anything like this without some sort of tech issue. Tom, did you have something to add to your presentation?
I would, please. It's about outdoor education. So just to leapfrog from the Ministry of Eco-Resources, we made sure that all those would be relevant to teach outside if you had sheltered space. But I feel like every time we talk about environmental education, it would be crazy if us lot don't talk about outdoor education, given that we know with a lot of children with SEN needs in mainstream, and how much better they do in the natural environment, how much better I would have done at school in natural environment. And I've seen it for decades over and over again, because whenever I teach in school, I try to make sure it's outside, and they often have to put coats on but still love it. And if it was done regularly, then I think they would gain a lot from it. The problem is that they don't have welly boots and coats in a lot of schools, and so I'm working on some systems of different levels of outdoor classrooms. The simple one that I'd love to have built everywhere for people, made out of wood with a raised platform, solar panels on top, and a living wall all around the side, always seems to come out at about 30 grand. For about 10 grand, a number of schools who've got local businesses to sponsor a tented canopy that comes down quite low with wooden pillars. And then I like keeping it really simple inside with wooden log seats and this big heavy planks for benches. So that seems kind of 6 to 10 grand, depending on the size, a really simple solution that I would love to see in every school.
Yeah, absolutely. Beth, you and I have been to quite a lot of schools in Devon over the last couple of years, and there's all sorts of barriers. It's quite often afraid to say the teachers who are kind of restricting use of the outside space. So quite often there is really good outside space which is not used very often. Equipment is a big issue. So we've had kids that just don't have wellies, or definitely came across one child who said, oh, these, this is really my only pair of shoes and I don't really want to get them muddy. There are also people who said, oh, wellies aren't really my style. So there's a few different challenges there. But yeah, I mean, I don't see why there couldn't be funding from kind of local farm supplies, etc., to have wellies in every school. I guess it's then always coming down to the teachers in the school having time to apply for grants or to contact those. But maybe that's something that our network
on the National Education Nature Park finding funding page, one of the people that we've listed is someone who specifically her mission is to get Wellington boots on the shoes of young people, and is the most responsive person I have ever gotten in touch with. I shall find her information and pop it in here if that's ever helpful.
I think that's mega praise, given that you work with Jess Tipton, who is on any community.
Isn't it? It's fantastic. It's it's something I'm always really inspired to see when working in this sector, is how passionate people are and responsive they are, and how they are trying to deal with the barriers involved, and that's a really important part of making sure we all have access. But I'll pop the finding funding page in there with this person's details on, so that they can be used if helpful. And they're not nature park specific, they're just sources of funding we thought that would be useful for people who needed them.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess this is an ideal space to talk about Lucy Mottram's amazing sustainability bulletin, which goes around to lots of organisations in Devon. So there's a few things in the and Lucy's on this call if you want to get in touch with her. She's put a couple of links in the chat. Lucy's also previous I'm doing you a little plug, Lucy, if that's okay. Previous chair of Need, and does loads with Recycle Devon County Council in terms of the Devon Waste Education Resources. So there's a link there in the chat. Lucy says that composting is a great link with school grounds, outdoor learning, and then there's a link to the Devon Waste Education Resources. Anna Harrison, who is fairly new to the National Trust in being and I'm not sure what your title is actually, it's Environmental Engagement Officer or something like that. So looking at looking at how National Trust as a large landowner can work with practitioners and provide a platform for local schools to engage with nature. I know that Anna has done loads of tree planting at Killerton and all sorts of kind of community engagement efforts. Tom has added that Kate and the team at Arlington have been really good in Devon. Libby said Fraser National Trust has been brilliant, teaming up with Libby's efforts and her team at Plastic Free North Devon with their Oceans programme, Ocean Explorer Academy. Really knowledgeable. And Lucy's says she's got some hard copies of the compost curriculum. So if anybody would like one, to email her, lucy.mottram@devon.gov.uk. We've got loads of people here. Okay. Charlie says, alongside my work with Cambridge Zero, I'm developing a video game to support eco-education for teens. And you can find out more on the website, which is there in the chat. Oh yeah, Anna's nature engagement officer, of course. And there we go. Who we got? So Daisy is also working on a project with National Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust and Plymouth City Council, trying to connect young people to green spaces in their area. Doing a similar work with the Parks programme, so happy to share any information with schools, and it would be good to talk with other organisations in the area. Used to work as an English teacher in Plymouth and have recently started this role. Good, so good to see kind of connections happening with Elsa as well, and Libby. Great, so loads of things to share, and please do share what you're working on in the chat, and then I can kind of circulate afterwards. So in 15 minutes or so, Peter Littlewood from the Young People's Trust for the Environment is going to be talking, but I suggest, my voice is going also, we take a little break until, well, Peter will be speaking at 11:05, so I suggest if you come back to your desks just after 11, and then we can get going again. But thank you so much, and we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks, Jess.
Hello, Peter. Good to see you. Sorry. Just having a short break to get coffee, etc.
Really quiet, nothing's happening. I was thinking, oh, that's okay then. I was thinking, I'm not getting any sound. What's going on?
No, don't you worry. Yeah, so we've had two really interesting presentations this morning. One from Tom Wormsley at the Ministry of Eco Education, and the other from Yogi at Natural History Museum.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we had about 70 people signed up on Eventbrite, and I think at our maximum about 53 people so far this morning. So it's kind of a mixed crowd of practitioners, people who are Exmoor National Park, Dartmoor National Park, RHS, Wildlife Trust, that sort of people, and a few independents as well. So thank you for coming. I think officially you start at 11:05, but I don't know if you'd like to just check that you can share your presentation.
Yeah, okay, hang on, let's just do this quickly. All okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Good, okay, I'll stop the share again. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Good.
And so the way that we're doing it, Peter, is that after the presentation there's some Q&A whereby people are just submitting questions in the chat, and Beth and I will be kind of facilitating that chat by just reading to you the questions from the chat period. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We'll just wait for people to come back and then start at 11:05.
Yeah, sure.
We weren't all just having a weird sleep.
Yeah, it was a bit spooky to arrive to complete silence. It was like, oh.
It's amazing how silent people can be when they're filling up their coffee cups.
Oh, well, everyone's on mute, but I kind of thought somebody would be speaking, maybe, but but no, it's fine.
The chat's going, yeah, the chat's going ahead.
Hi, Peter. We've chatted a lot on email. I haven't met you before. Nice to see you. I like your office. You got a wood burner in there.
No, that's a speaker. It's PA system. I'm singing this weekend and next weekend, so I've been having to do some practice.
Oh, nice.
There's time now. Quick time for a quick practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Okay. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. No.
Even Keith on the chat here has asked, do we get a song?
No, sorry, Keith, not today.
In another conference.
Yeah, it doesn't work very well on Zoom anyway, and I'd have to change all the settings first.
Nice.
Good way out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sticking to it.
Okay, so
Got really good questions in the chat, by the way, which I think Jess reads out at the end, but it's definitely good to have plenty of time at the end for the questions. They were really good.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully you've found yourself refreshed after the first half. Again, we've had some great speakers already today. Tom and Yogi were just brilliant talking about what are two fairly similar but really innovative and exciting initiatives in terms of integrating environmental themes into the national curriculum and into schools, which is great, and hopefully our network can really help to boost that in Devon. So next we welcome Peter Littlewood, who's here from the Young People's Trust for the Environment, and then later we have a couple more speakers, the two Rachels, who I put together, which is a bit silly, but we have Rachel Musson, who's going to join us talking about Thoughtbox education, and Rachel Manning plus a student rep talking about the UK Sustainable Schools Network. So still got a lot to go, and the same sort of format. So we'll have 20 minutes of presentation followed by 10 minutes or so for questions and answers by messaging in the chat. So Peter, the stage is now officially yours.
Okay, thanks very much, Jess. And good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm Peter Littlewood from the Young People's Trust for the Environment. I'm just going to quickly pop up a screen share, so bear with me a sec, and then we can get going. So just to give you a sort of a brief background on the Young People's Trust for the Environment, we're a small national charity founded in 1982 originally, and then we changed over to being a CIO in 2013, which is where it'll look. If you go to the Charity Commission, that's what it'll look like. But actually, we've been around since 1982. I've not been around quite that long, only since 1993 myself, as a sort of staff member at YPTE. But anyway, we provide free environmental education services for schools and young people across the UK. Because we're small, most of the stuff we do is online. And in 2022, we had about 1.2 million visits to the YPTE website. The site is a way of getting at a whole load of different things that we provide, including fact sheets. There's a library of just over 200 different fact sheets on different environmental issues and also animal and plant species. And they're all written with the idea that an 8-year-old could get quite a lot from them. We do know that they get used quite a lot by adults as well, who are looking for a kind of a basic guide to get them into a particular subject. But they're freely accessible to anybody and a very well used sort of part of the site. We have a news page as well, and this gets updated whenever we have the time, which isn't very often. There's a whole load of news stories stacked up at the moment that I want to start putting out, but I've got to write them first. So hopefully with December getting slightly quieter, I'll be able to get some of that done. Another key thing that we have on the site is lesson plans. There's 38 suites of lesson plans available, all free to download. Each of the suites contains between about 4 and 6 separate lessons on all kinds of different issues. You can see there's a few of them showing up here, but if you want to see them all, you click on this brown button and it will then bring up all 38 different ones for you to look at and download if you wish. That's something that the Department for Education has pointed out, not for a while actually, but they did this on their social media. We also have home learning packs, which we started doing during COVID-19. But that have carried on being popular now. It's full of kind of activities, games, and learning opportunities, but designed around parents doing it with their kids, really, rather than it happening at school. Nonetheless, I mean, a lot of the things could be used in a school context as well. But there's an awful lot there. I think we've got about 20 different home learning packs that are available. And so there's quite a big range there. And there are videos here that you can see that illustrate some of them that have been made by children who've actually worked on some of the packs. And again, Department for Education, let's put this out on their social media, doing a brilliant job of cropping the photo such that you couldn't really see anything that was going on. But there you go. Another service that we provide is talks in schools. These are free, and it has to be said the vast majority of them now are online. It's one of the things that came out of COVID that was actually of benefit in some ways, is that schools are now really open to the idea of you kind of turning up on a screen and talking to the children that way, which means that the service is now offered across the entirety of the UK. And indeed, I have also talked at the British School in Belgium, in Brussels. So it's a service that's really widely available. It gets used a lot. It always gets very, very high reviews from the teachers. Talks typically last about 45 minutes for Key Stage 2 with 15 to 20 minutes for questions at the end. And a Key Stage 1 talk would typically last about half an hour-ish, with again about another 15 minutes after that for questions from the children. We pretty much always find out that we run out of time rather than the children running out of questions, because there's an awful lot that they want to know about. Topics are really quite wide-ranging. Again, on the website, you can find out about the talks, and you can also see the full range. There's a downloadable list of the range of topics that we provide. Others can be provided as well, provided there's enough time to get it done. We also have a range of videos on our website. We're going to be creating a lot more video, I hope, within the next sort of few months. This one is one that I've chosen to put on the presentation simply because some young people were involved in actually presenting it. And in fact, our cameraman for this was, I think, 11 years old when he filmed it and did all the video editing work for it. These kids are all home educated, and they spent time doing the things they actually enjoyed. So our cameraman, Seb, was an absolute expert on Final Cut Pro. I'm not sure what his maths would have been like, but he was an absolute genius with Final Cut Pro, and he continues to do amazing sort of videography work now. We did a podcast during lockdown, which is still available for you to listen to if you really want to. It's interviews with some of our presidents and also our young trustees, and indeed one of our trustees as well. And it's all about kind of, you know, their motivations for getting involved with the Young People's Trust in the first place. And talking of young trustees, we have a group now of a dozen young trustees who are all aged between 16 and 24. They act as advisors for me and the board of trustees, the grown-up ones, who obviously manage the charity, but the young trustees have a lot of input now, and they're starting to get really quite active on things like producing content for our social media. We've got room for a few more. We think we can do a board of about 15 young trustees at a time. They meet about once every 2 months online at a time of their choosing, which generally seems to be between 6:30 and 7:30 in the evenings. And we get some really brilliant discussions and lots of great ideas from the young trustees. They're allowed to serve, we've just changed the rules again, they're allowed to serve until the age of 25 by mutual agreement. But on their 25th birthday, sadly, they have to leave. We have another scheme for primary schools called Better Planet Schools that we've been running for the last few years now, and it's starting to build up some traction. Here's the homepage of the Better Planet Schools website. Essentially, it's an all year round program of environmental education lessons and activities for primary schools to be able to do. Each term, you get a different topic to focus on. We've got 9 terms worth of materials available already. So obviously there's 3 years worth of participation before you'd even have to do any sort of a repeat. In the course of that time, we'll be refreshing or changing some of the modules and adding some new ones as well. A lot of teachers are now using this as a sort of a script, if you like, for their eco clubs, because they're finding there's not necessarily the time to fit the lessons in during the school timetable, which we appreciate. It's very, very difficult, and that's absolutely fine. What fundamentally Better Planet Schools is about for us is child-led behaviour change. And the reason that it started in the first place was that we did a pilot project in Southend called Energy Challenges UK. That was funded by the EU. And Southend was the UK partner. Basically, we piloted it in 14 schools. The idea with the original EU project was to save 30% of energy usage in schools. It was meant to be 15% through behaviour change, 15% through infrastructure change in the schools. YPTE was the education partner, and with the behaviour change part, all of the schools achieved between 10 and 15% energy usage reductions. At the times that the measurements were done, none of the schools had actually had any infrastructure changes made. So it was all through behaviour change alone. And we saw the power of that if we could get schools across the country to save between 10 and 15% of their energy usage each year, it could actually make a serious difference in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, reducing and slowing down climate change to some degree. And also, it has the advantage that it kind of cascades down through from the children to families. And, you know, the behaviour change actually happens in households as well, which is something that we've been really pleased to find. Here are a few bits of feedback from some of the schools that have reported back to us really in the last month or so. Yeah, we're really pleased to see how well the resources are going down at the moment in schools. There are prizes available, and in fact, shortly we will be distributing our first free energy surveys for 3 winning schools. We're just waiting for the company that's sponsoring that to actually get around to telling us how we're going to do it, which is taking longer than I expected by quite a long way. But never mind, there's also other prizes that will be available. And in fact, a school in Essex is going to be receiving a sort of renewable energy learning pack quite shortly from us. Just more feedback there from Southend-on-Sea Council on the way the original project worked. We involve celebrities as well. So people like Kel Spellman have been involved right from the start on working on Better Planet Schools. And he's a really sort of passionate supporter of YPTE. For primary schools, again, we have the Primary Awards for Green Education in Schools. This is our competition for excellence in environmental education, and it's completely free to take part. It's very easy to take part. You simply register yourself, and then you can upload materials. We don't expect you necessarily to do anything different if you're in a school and you're doing some sort of environmental education work as part of your normal year. Just tell us about it. I mean, you can tell the children that they'll be entering a competition. It might act as an incentive to produce some slightly better work than you would have got maybe otherwise. This number now is actually incorrect. It's gone up to about 450,000 young people who've taken part. We had entries from about 40,000 young people last year, and we're looking to get at least that number, if not more, in the coming year. And I know we've got schools registered to take part in Devon already, and certainly we had plenty taking part last year. In terms of award categories, there are 4 categories that you can enter under. Green Action Takers is for things like school gardens, but it can also be it could be a wildlife area. You could be creating a pond. It could even be going out into the countryside and doing something practical, maybe a field trip or something like that you could put into the Green Action Takers category. Creators is for environmentally themed art, music, drama, poetry. So all sorts of different things that you can put in there. And again, we get some great entries in the Green Creators category. Green Entrepreneurs is for eco businesses that are started in schools, you know, as a sort of a micro business. A lot of schools now do that, and many of them choose to do an environmentally themed eco business, which is really good. And we get some great entries again in that. Green Researchers covers off pretty much everything else. So if you want to do a project that's based around maths or history or geography or science, all of those things will probably fit into the Green Researchers category. As I said earlier, we have a group of celebrities who support us. These are some of our presidents here. Most of them you'll probably recognize. The ones you maybe won't are Andy, who is a children's author and wrote all the Mr. Gum books. And has just recently written a book called Benny the Blue Whale, which is for grown-ups, and he used ChatGPT to help him, and apparently it's quite bizarre. And Adrian is a wildlife cameraman. He does occasionally do voiceovers, but mostly he's behind the camera, but he has some amazing stories to be able to tell to groups of young people about some of the animals that he's filmed. We did have a competition for secondary schools last year. Unfortunately, we're not running it this year, at the moment, at least, although there is a chance that it may get resurrected soon. I'd be really pleased to be doing another competition with secondary schools and to be working more in secondary schools. I mean, the free talk service is open to anything up to 6th form. And we certainly do talks at secondary school level quite regularly. So that's something to bear in mind for secondary school teachers out there as well. Right, irrelevant slide about Google. And that's basically it. That's the Young People's Trust for the Environment. So I'm going to stop my share now and come back on the screen and let's see if we've got questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter. I can't help but reflect on the fact that, you know, you pack a massive punch for a small team. So you really must be working efficiently and effectively. So it's really cool to hear all those things, especially the things like the green entrepreneurs and stuff like that, which is, I know, something which we've thought about doing, but we just don't have the time or resources to do it. And yeah, I can't help but think when I've listened to all of these talks, how can we all have kind of, well, in nature conservation, you would be talking about it as a kind of landscape scale. I'm not sure what the alternative is for the education, but how can we have a landscape scale education effort? And maybe that's something which we can discuss going forward. So there's a couple of questions on the chat. One is there a Better Planet Schools to support eco clubs in secondary schools?
Not at the moment. I would love for that to happen. And in fact, I reckon we could modify it fairly easily. So it may be something that it may be a question of kind of watching this space. I think secondary schools have got some we found from doing the Eco Action Awards last year, which was basically the idea behind that was to get schools to tell us about the students who were already doing really good work around environmental issues and improving the environment at the school. And basically what we ended up with was submissions from the various school eco clubs, which was great. There were some really good things going on, and it would be excellent to be doing that kind of thing in secondary, you know, to have Better Planet Schools for secondary schools. It's not there yet, but hopefully we might be able to get it going within the next year or so. I'd love to see that happen. Great.
So it's in the pipeline, possibly. Elsa has asked, would these awards be open to schools in other countries, for example, Kenya?
I'm afraid the pages is UK only. It's across the entirety of the UK, so it does cover Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales, as well as England. But I'm afraid that's as far as it goes. It's not possible to enter from other countries at the moment. Then again, that's something that may change in the future, but at the moment, that is the case, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, let's just lots of chat about Skern Lodge, which is a fantastic place to go. Does anybody have any more questions for Peter? Either in the chat or feel free to raise your hands. I have a question about how, I mean, that's an incredible amount of entries for the awards. I mean, how did that happen? How did that come about?
I mean, that's just what happens. The first year we had about 18,000. In the second year, 39,917 children taking part. Fortunately, they don't enter as individuals. If they did, we would just be buried under a deluge of entries. They do enter, I mean, you can enter as just an eco club, so just a small group. You could enter as a class, a year group, or even the whole school. So it varies considerably in terms of how the children engage and how the schools engage with it. The judging process is slightly nightmarish because there are so many entries that come in, and we have to filter them really quickly. We're up against it, really. But the deadline for entries is the 3rd of May. So there's loads of time for you to be able to take part. But then we have to have told the schools before the half term starts at the end of May whether they've won or not, which means that we've then got this sort of manic couple of weeks where we don't sleep much and we just spend that time looking at entries. But it's always worked so far. As I say, we're hoping to increase the entry numbers again this year, and we're looking at ways of maybe augmenting our team for the judging process, because it gets to the point where you've seen too many projects, quite frankly, and you have to just give yourself a bit of a rest from it. But we are looking at ways of, as I say, augmenting the team for a week or two, just to make that simpler and less of a stress, perhaps. Yeah, in terms of the prizes, there's a lot of prizes available for that as well. There's just under 50 prizes, 48 prizes available. Top prize being £2,000 for the UK champions, £750 for regional champions, of which there are 3, and then the other prizes go down from sort of £500 down to £100 for highly commended entries. So
that's brilliant. I mean, that schools are masters at making small amounts of money go a very long way. So
and it's really good that we've got so many prizes available. It does make it, worthwhile having a go. The odds are definitely much better than they are with the lottery, and you can definitely be in with a decent chance of picking up a prize. And yeah, I've been really pleased with the absolute delight I've seen from teachers who've just picked up a £100 highly commended prize, and couldn't be more happy or proud of what they and their children have achieved. And I have to say that up against all the entries they're up against now, being in the top 50 is actually really quite an achievement in itself.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, no, seriously, with that number of entries, that's quite a massive deal. I wondered on that score how many people in this arena, I suppose, work with eco schools and the green flag scheme and things like that, because that's something which I feel like is quite well known in the area and could do with some kind of continuity and collaboration with others. I don't know if that's anything that you've worked with, Peter.
I wouldn't say we've worked with them exactly. I mean, we've seen plenty of entries for competitions that have actually been based around stuff that's been done for a green flag, which is absolutely fine. And sometimes the schools do actually win with those sort of things. So that's all absolutely fine. The entries I don't like, because what's important with pages is that we see the work that the children have done, is when we get a sort of eco school style report which has been written by the teacher. That's not the kind of thing that pages is looking for. So that's always a bit of a disappointment when we see that, because we kind of know that the work that has been done and it's great, but unfortunately we're seeing the teacher's input rather than the children's, and it's the children's work that is the focus of the judging. We do make that pretty clear, but it's not necessarily something that everybody adheres to, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, again, with Better Planet Schools, a lot of the stuff that in terms of the activities actually works really well with eco schools, and we're more than happy for schools to run the two programs side by side. It doesn't really make any sort of difference to us. We just want as many schools to be involved with Better Planet Schools as possible. And one thing I should have mentioned is that Better Planet Schools is currently completely free for schools to take part in. There's a sort of a notional charge of £100 per school per year, but we've pre-funded a lot of places. So at the moment, the Green Match Fund is providing free places for well, we've got several hundred more places available for schools to be able to take up. So if you're from a primary school and you haven't signed up for Better Planet Schools yet, then please do, because the places are there and they're free, and you can get an awful lot from it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peter. It's a real pleasure to have had you on our kind of virtual conference. Yeah, it's been brilliant to have such enthusiastic speakers talking about environmental education in different ways. We're all trying to sort of do the same thing in a way, and there's all sorts of different approaches, which is great. So it's good to kind of be able to swap best practice and see if we can apply some things more locally as well. No doubt there'll be lots of opportunity for questions kind of after the event. But thank you, Peter. We are amazingly slightly ahead of time. But Rachel, are you happy to start a few minutes early? Yeah?
Yes, very happy. Yeah.
So we've had some great speakers this morning, and next I'd really like to give a warm welcome to Rachel Musson of Thoughtbox Education. We're really grateful to have you along, Rachel, and looking forward to learning more about the programmes that you offer. So I'll let you take the stage.
Morning, everyone. I'm really sorry, I've got a sniffety cold, so I'm apologising if I sniff a little bit during this next 20 minutes or so. And the sun has just come glaring into my face, which I'm not apologising for, because that's actually quite pleasant. So if I disappear, that's fine, because hopefully you can still hear me as we go. I'm going to start today in a slightly different way, perhaps. Rather than tell you what we do, I want to just talk a little bit about why. And I'm kind of beginning with this provocation question, which is, can changing our mindset change everything? Now, as many of us on this call know, having worked in this space for a long time, there's a lot of opportunities now starting to open up within educational places and spaces to bring environmental education and climate awareness into schools. But there still isn't enough space, time and permission. And really the work we've been doing for the last 8 years at Thoughtbox, 9 years now, is looking at mindset shift. But I want to just introduce a little bit of what this work is. And rather than sort of dabble too much on who I am, I just want to draw your attention to the bottom bullet point in my little bio. I'm going to introduce myself, and often do, as an inconvenient woman. And the reason I do that, especially in schools, is the inconvenience of the fact that climate change education, environmental education, isn't just something we can teach. It's something we need to inhabit. It's something we need to practice. It's something we need to embed. It's not just something we can pop in. And really, what does that look like? And how can we bring a much more holistic approach when there's no space, there's no time, there's no permission, there's no funds? And so how can we start to really welcome in a different approach or different approaches into this sort of work? And what I love about what this conference is this morning and what Jess is holding in need is we're all doing slightly different things, and that's really great. There is no one way to do this sort of work. There are just many, many ways, and different schools will have different needs. And often the sort of conversation can have a different title. You know, is this environmental education? Is this sustainability education? Is this climate change education? What is this? And I guess really the invitation that I want to explore this morning is that this is all just educating for a VUCA world. And if you've never come across this acronym, I'm really sorry, because it's utterly miserable. But VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I apologize for bringing a really miserable acronym into your morning. And yet that is the world we're in. The world is always shifting and changing and uncertain and complex. And really the invitation for us in this moment in time is, how can we support ourselves and the young people in our communities to develop the competencies, the mindsets, the resilience, the capacities to meet and to thrive in our changing world? And so these questions are all the questions that we're constantly exploring in our work at Thoughtbox. But just a couple of more sort of invitations to land into this deeper space. Firstly, the inconvenient truth that no school is an island, and what's happening in this big picture of the wider world is showing up in our schools. And, you know, I was a teacher for many, many years, and it can sometimes feel that we're protecting children by not talking about the big stuff going on out there. But actually, we work very closely with climate psychology science and recognize that children need to talk about the big stuff, because whether we like it or not, it's shaping their world. And it's also showing up in their dreams and their preoccupations and their questions. And so there is a need to bring the outside in. One of the invitations really to sort of bring into this space is the climate crisis is a crisis of human emotion. And when I say that we can't just teach about climate change, one of the things we explore in our trainings is that actually, if you have lessons where you're just exploring the facts and figures of climate change, it's enormous and it's overwhelming and it can be terrifying. And actually, that's not a very good lesson to just give that information. We've got to give something else with it. We've got to give active hope. We've got to give what is happening to create healthier futures. We've got to give the stories of all you guys doing something different. So recognizing that how we're exploring this really matters. The third one, this is the one that I kind of always bring in with my inconvenience. None of us adults are immune from any of this. We might be bringing this into schools, but we're affected by all of the environmental unfolding around us, and our own emotional state matters. And really the sort of invitation, otherwise I'm just giving you some miserable statistics. The invitation is to recognize that whatever we're doing, let's just create safe, supportive and resilient communities. That's at the heart of every teacher that I know. That's why we go into education, because we want to help young people to thrive. But to thrive in the world that we're in is going to require a different level of competencies, a different mindset, and a much more we're in this together approach. Because none of us are experts. You know, if any of us are experts in the existential crisis that we're facing, I invite you to get off this call and crack on with fixing it. But none of us are the sort of the expert. We're all exploring this together, and we're all just trying to support more resilient futures for people and planet. And so however we're doing that is the beautiful way that we can do that, but we're never alone. I also, if it's okay, would invite you just to take a little moment in this particular call in what time is it, 11:35 on a Tuesday morning, to tap into right now, in this particular moment, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about the climate and nature crisis? And if you could just pop into the chat box a word, doesn't need to be any of these words, it could be many words, but just if you wouldn't mind just tapping into how you're feeling at this particular point in time, and just share some emotions in the chat, recognizing that every emotional state is very welcome. So how are you feeling right here, right now about the climate and nature crisis? And just pop into the chat. We've got optimism. Thank you, Patricia. Tom is hopeful but tired. I really hear you, Tom. What else? Time pressured. Thank you. Overwhelmed. Yeah, we've got frustration and hope. And I really like the fact you've got both of those going on. We've got concern. Thank you, Libby. What else have we got in the room? We've got excitement, we've got optimism. Elsa, yeah, I really hear you flowing in and out of lots of emotions. We've got this pressure to make a difference. Absolutely. I really want to bring in a phrase, and we've got frustration from the government. Oh my goodness, yes. Focus from Caroline. There's a wonderful woman, Clover Hogan, who runs an organization called Force of Nature, and she talks about an emotional smoothie. And I really like that image, that actually sometimes we've just got all these emotions like messed up inside of us. And I find myself, I can go in the morning from feeling super optimistic to being totally despairing by lunchtime to being really activated by afternoon tea. You know, we can feel many different things in a moment, and that's okay. We've got shock about the perhaps lack of awareness. We've got curiosity about what is possible. We've got hope and depression, yeah, multifaceted emotions. One of the invitations I really would like to kind of bring into this space is to let these in. One of the things in schools so often is we don't want to talk about the kind of mushy stuff, and especially not our own, because we feel it's not appropriate. And yet when we feel, we start to care, and when we care, we act, and when we act, we shift. And so letting the emotion in is a really important part of any of this work. We work really closely with the Climate Psychology Alliance at Thoughtbox, and one of the things I've really appreciated about their framing of eco-anxiety is to call it eco-empathy, and to recognize that eco-anxiety is actually a really healthy response to the nested crisis that we face. If we're not feeling a little bit anxious, that is perhaps something to worry about, because there's a lot of stuff unraveling around us. But if we see that word anxiety, it's a very inward facing, quite a demoralizing and non-activating emotion. But actually we feel because we care. And so if we reframe eco-anxiety as eco-empathy, empathy is a very outward pouring, outward facing emotion that we can turn into action. And so I really welcome us to be feeling all these big complex feelings, and recognizing that that is why we get out of bed in the morning, because we want to co-create this more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. I also just want to bring in a favorite new friend of mine. I don't know whether any of you have come across the vagus nerve or have connected with new, beautiful, groundbreaking research into what's called the polyvagal theory. But whether you're aware of this or not, and I can share lots of things afterwards, we all have this nerve running down our bodies called the vagus nerve. And I love it because it looks like a tree, and I'm obsessed with trees. It runs from the very bottom of the lower cortex in the spine. in the brain, all the way down through quite a large number of our major organs. And the reason this nerve is important is it's constantly being activated by our emotional responses to the world. And what the research is now showing us, and we probably already know this, but research is always helpful, is that depending on how we're feeling emotionally, both being aware of that or not, we have different responses. So if we're feeling really resourced and resilient and energized and empowered, we're at this top of the ladder space of having the ventral vagal activation. We're feeling that we can deal with the world, we're resilient, we're resourced, we're connected. And then we can flip into the total opposite of the bottom of that ladder of just being overwhelmed, of being despairing, of not wanting to get out of bed. And the reason I mention this and welcome this nerve into our consciousness is that this all happens below the conscious level. And it's actually just our nervous system keeping us well. So when the nervous system is overwhelmed, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in to kind of give us a little bit of comfort and to keep us safe. And sometimes it just means that we have to stay in bed for the day and put the duvet over our head. But really what I'm inviting in this awareness is how can we support ourselves and young people with resilience to get ourselves into the top of that ladder space. And what I love about the vagus nerve is the two biggest things we can do to support a really strong activated nervous system are singing and humming. So the more we sing, the more resourced our nervous system is, and being out in nature. So the two wins to get a really sort of strong, supportive internal nervous system are to sing outside, or just, be outside and sing a lot inside. So thinking about that in sort of the narrative of this conference this morning, all of us really focused on environmental education. It's even more important for our well-being that we're outside, never mind everything else that we know is the reason we've got to get outside. I'm also just sharing a QR code, and when I've stopped talking, I will put a link into the chat of a fabulous article that was published yesterday in The Guardian, giving incredibly detailed research projects about all the reasons why being in nature is good for our psychiatry, psychology, mental health, nervous system, you name it. We can now prove why being outside and connected to nature is not only supporting healthy planets, it's supporting healthy humans. So there's a QR code for that, and I'll put a link again in the chat. I still haven't talked about what we're doing yet, because I think it's important to just look a little bit at the bigger picture, but I'm also just going to share a little bit of a recent report that I'm finding so energizing, that was from a partner organization called Reboot the Future, and I'll share a link in the chat shortly. So Reboot the Future have recently tapped into over 7,000 educators in the UK, a completely broad mix of teachers, to see how you're feeling about education system, what do you think is needed in the world that we're in, and what's going on in your school. Some of the stats are fairly miserable, but not surprising. This one in particular, that 85% of teachers in England doubt that the education system is actually preparing young people for the future.
I think
it's quite, oh, Jess, yeah. Jess, you just unmuted and then you froze, or have I frozen? Did I just freeze everybody there? I'm just gonna.
I think it's Jess that's frozen, actually, not you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're all good.
Oh, I'm back
but
on
we can't
again.
see your screen.
Well, when Jess comes back. Okay, yeah, I just stopped sharing in a panicky. I've broken the internet. Jess, you were saying something, but did you want to?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you were frozen, but I think it was actually my side. So carry on.
Yes. So the reality is that we're doubting that what's currently happening in schools is going to support young people to meet the challenges and the opportunities of the world that we're in. But the third stat on the left, I also really love. There are 3 times as many teachers willing to take on the role of sustainability lead than what you actually need. I mean, I don't like the idea of actually need, because we need everybody to take this on, but there's a lot of energy for this. And there's also a real empathy for all of us in schools to know why it's really hard to get this into schools. And I think I'm really appreciating this report for our own work to say, look, teachers want this, young people need this, we've got to get more and more permission to get this into schools. So I'll share this report with you just as a great resource for you in whatever work you're doing, to say, look, we need this, we want it, we've got to get this in, and then loads of resources to show why it's important for our mental, psychological well-being as well. So how we're working in the world as an organization is really to meet both the symptoms and the root causes of the crises that we're facing. And a lot of the work we've done over the last 9 years has been understanding that disconnection is really where so many of these symptoms of our ill health have come from, both personally, socially, and ecologically. And so we support schools by both addressing the symptoms and really focusing on creating healthy relationships with ourselves, with each other, and with the rest of nature. We use a triple well-being approach, which is supporting personal, social, and environmental well-being with practices and competencies to create this well space on a daily basis. And as I mentioned earlier, we're helping to move from these big, overwhelming feelings into empowerment in action through conscious care, through learning to care for ourselves, care for each other, and care for the rest of nature. We have a range of programs which I'll mention very briefly, but most significantly is the core of what we're offering, which is to help to strengthen in our own lives as educators and in young people these competencies for resilient futures. And we have 3 core practices of self-care, people care, and earth care embedded right across the work we do, recognizing that we can't be well if our planet is sick. But if we're so emotionally overwhelmed to even get out of bed, we're not able to do anything to support the wellness of the rest of the world. And also we need others to be well too. So that's why we have this integration of personal, social, and environmental well-being. And we have core skills of critical thinking, of empathy building, and of systems thinking and relationships embedded through everything that we do. And all of the work that we're offering with schools is just to start with really simple daily practices to strengthen these 3 levels of personal, social, environmental well-being, to really help shift the narrative of overwhelm to one of empowerment by just starting where we're at, to really support this inner and outer systems change, and to build on all the stories of the amazing things going on around the world to create healthier futures, so that young people, when they're really opened up to what's happening in the world, don't feel alone and don't feel they need to start from scratch, because there's such a lot going on out there already. Just in brief, the 3 areas that we support, we have programs to support educators, we have online trainings, and we have a lot of in-person trainings. We have a discussion-based curriculum for schools, and we have an online community to just bring folks together to just be exploring all of this in safe, brave, and connected ways. If any of you have not connected with our work before, there's a quick QR code there. We've got a large number of discussion-based lesson plans using all of the principles I've just shared. We have a membership that's a free membership where you can get I think there's something like 76 lessons. We've got a paywall as well, and it's £5 a month for an individual or £200 for a school, to just access a huge amount of resources to really be developing these competencies for triple well-being. And we have 3 core trainings that we offer. We have a short courageous conversations training to really help to create brave, safe, and connected classrooms. And what can that look like to start to bring some of these maybe kind of complex and overwhelming issues into the classroom, to move through into a place of empowerment. We are working now with leadership, looking at whole school holistic approaches to behaviour change by putting triple wellbeing at the heart of schools. And we're launching this year in April a triple wellbeing practitioner program for individual educators to come and work with us over the course of a year to become an accredited practitioner, so that you're in your school or in your community embedding those practices into your personal and professional context. And I can share more about any of those if folks are interested. I really love this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown, and she talks about the idea that we're always practicing something. So we're either practicing upholding the world as it is, or we're practicing shifting into the world as we wish it to be. And this idea of practices and habit change and mindset change, I find so supportive in the enormity of how do you deal with the big problems of the world, and just bring it right back down to, okay, what am I doing on a daily basis that's actually creating a healthier future? And some of the habits I've got maybe not doing that, and maybe I can start by shifting there. And I just find it's a much more invitational approach to systems change than we've got to bring down the government, or we've got to kind of embed climate education into every single school by next week. Let's just start where we're at and start to bring these conversations in. And what I'm really appreciating both in this conference and in the wider narrative is how much is happening when there isn't even space, time, and permission to do it. And I know you had Jess Tipton talking this morning, and I'm sorry I missed it because I was in another workshop. Just talking about what government is now bringing in to schools. But regardless of that, you will know how much is happening without that permission, without that funding. And so just imagine what can happen when we start to really open up these spaces. I'm just going to pause for a sec. Jess, have I got 5 more minutes? Or yes, what I would love to do is show you a really random video, and it's 4 minutes long, and it will feel really random until the 5th minute when I explain why I'm showing this to you. So let's just journey together. You may have come across this video before, and if you haven't, I just hope you enjoy this. I watch this so often and I find it such a beautiful video. It's called How Wolves Change Rivers. And I'm just going to reshare my screen with the sound on this time so that you get to hear it. Jess, can I ask you, if it for some reason doesn't work, can you just shout at me, because I won't necessarily know. Okay, so let's optimize for video. Hopefully this works.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. they began to meander less. There was less erosion, the channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Okay, I love that video for so many reasons, but one of the reasons I wanted to show it today, well, there are a couple of reasons. Firstly, this idea of enabling environments, of what can we do that actually enables the health and well-being of an entire system to regenerate. And one of the wolves, if you like, of the education system is nature connection. If we can embed more nature connection into our schools, we're actually creating enabling environments to support the health and well-being of so much of our ecosystems. The second invitation is to recognize that we can be a wolf. Now, what I love about this study that was shown and the reality of this process is the wolf didn't do anything. It was just wolfing. And what that wolf did by just wolfing was enable a healthier balance of the ecosystem around it. And so much of the work that we're doing in this space, we can really enable healthier systems around us just by showing up in a way that is allowing that to happen. And the third invitation is to think about trophic cascades. And when we saw in that video that when the wolves came in, the deer population went down and the other populations went up and everything moved on from there. There are certain things, certain points of intervention that we can make in schools that create very quick trophic cascades. And things can shift and flourish so quickly. So I find it, again, when we're really overwhelmed by how big of a mess we're in, to kind of keep thinking, right, let's keep wolfing, because there's certain things we can do and certain things we can embed that can create huge changes very quickly. So I leave you with this sort of invitation to be more wolf in the work that you're doing and to kind of hold that space of reflection of how much can shift very, very quickly when it's enabled. I think I'll pause there and see if there are any reflections or questions.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's really great to hear from you. We've always sort of seeing the Thoughtbox name popping up and crossing paths in all sorts of conferences in different ways. So it's really good to kind of hear from you directly. Yeah, sort of as a biologist, you know, this stuff is just so obvious, and you kind of think, oh, I wish, you know, it was talked about more. We talk about the kind of Yellowstone wolves as an example in our Hope workshop as what can make a difference, and it's really, really powerful just sort of thinking about it like that. But it's quite difficult to reconcile kind of that trophic cascade when at the moment we're so anthropocentric, and actually, you know, as an apex predator, you know, how much influence can we have, and how can we turn that around positively? I guess it's not really a question, just a rhetorical one, I suppose. But yeah, what's particularly interesting is using those kind of ecological references, which are so integral to the natural world, will hopefully spring connection that really makes sense, and it should all fall into place.
Yeah, definitely. And just on that note, Jess, you know, the leadership course that I mentioned, we use 4 beings to guide us through this leadership course. We use the hawk, the wolf, the tree, and the salmon. And the invitation is to be more hawk and kind of rise up and look at the bigger picture. I know Tom was here this morning, and Tom often brings a hawk with him into his course. So
yeah, he did.
Yeah, I'll say that. Tom came to the hawk one once and bought the hawk, and I was like, here we are.
Oh, it's not there anymore, Tom. Where's the hawk?
It's fair enough. It's gone to get him. So that invitation to be more hawk, which is like just look up at the bigger picture, and then when you're putting your action in, you're bringing a wider context in. The be more tree invitation is to recognize relationships. And those of you who know about the Wood Wide Web know that all of trees are interconnected under the ground and have these. Oh, here's the hawk. Hello, welcome, dear friend.
An owl.
Oh, we've got, okay, be more owl as well. You know, they're all welcome. So this tree relationship that we need to be resilient by supporting and connecting with each other. We use the wolf analogy in the same guise I've just used it there, to recognize that all of us can shape and shift an ecosystem just by how we show up and what we put in and out. And then the be more salmon, I'm just going to maybe end on the fact that we here on this call, we are all salmon, because the invitation is to be going upstream against the dominant downstream flow, which is the business as usual, towards a much healthier horizon. And salmon, after 2 years, they return to the place where they were birthed, because they know it's a place of health and well-being. And so I feel there's some invitation in that kind of be more salmon narrative to push against the dominant tide towards a healthier place for the future of people and planet. So champion your inner salmon, all of us on this
really
call this morning.
Is that, you know, you can keep things fun and interesting and really clear. Like there's no need for complex language, and having those kind of symbolic references is a really powerful way of doing it. So I really appreciate that. Someone said love the analogies. I also did want to mention the Wolf Conservation Trust, which is in Oxfordshire. If you're ever passing there, it's a brilliant small kind of backyard project which has quite big roots, and you can go and do a talk about, you know, see a talk about conservation of wolves, and then you can go out and house with wolves, which is quite an exciting thing, and definitely brings that nature connection, which can be really simple. People sort of talk about nature connection in all sorts of different ways. I went to somebody's house the other day, and they had been feeding a robin, and he was like, oh, do you want it to land on your hand? And it just landed there. And you know, I'm outside all the time and breathing in this stuff. I've got a beautiful rural view in front of me, but actually just having a robin sit on my hand was really, really powerful. So it's sometimes the real simple things, and I think the work that you're doing is really important and reflects the sorts of things which are happening or trying to happen in business. You know, thinking about you know, planet, people, profit, the same as sort of with your kind of triple well-being is, and that sort of regenerative leadership piece is really powerful, and hopefully becomes a bit more mainstream as we go on. So anybody got any questions for Rachel?
I know in the chat a few people have asked for links, so when I sort of mute myself again, I'll put some links in the chat for anything that I've shared as well.
That would be brilliant. Lots of people saying it's wonderful, inspiring. Are your resources used outside of education too?
Yes, yes. And
we've could be, sorry, just finished off. Could be game-changing for our town and parish councils, who in many ways can be the gatekeepers of change locally.
On that note, Rosa, we're not quite ready to launch them fully yet, but we've just created the Triple Wellbeing card deck, which is daily practices for triple wellbeing in our own lives and in any context. At the minute, they're just shared through our learning resources for schools, but we're going to be sharing these that any folks can use them in any context. So just kind of keep an eye on the Thoughtbox website, and we'll share that into different contexts. But I mean, I use the same, you know, it's funny, I use the same work with 5-year-olds and 85-year-olds. It just, and it fits. It's just connection to self, connection to others, connection to nature. So it does work in all contexts.
Absolutely. And kind of in, you know, it's so critical that all of us play our part. And I know we're kind of preaching to the converted here, but Tom's got his deck of cards already.
Tom's got the cards. Just showing off now, Tom.
But you know, a lot of people are put off by that barrier of not being an expert, but actually all of this has happened under the watch of experts. And even though there is an absolute place for trusting experts and being led by experts of all sorts of fields. Each individual has expertise that can be applied to mitigate the climate and nature crisis. And I think that's a really key point, which I think in communities, schools being, essential kind of beacons of hope in a community, it's really important to remember that we all need to play our part, and we can. We've got this.
And that really speaks to that quote about what are we practicing, like which, in our daily lives, which sort of world are we practicing kind of co-creating. And I love that, Jess. It's like we're all in here, we can all do a huge amount, but it doesn't need to feel overwhelming.
Absolutely. And you've obviously got quite a good business model. It's really great there's so many free resources, but also that there's sort of opportunity for schools and individuals to take the next step, which is great.
And I'll share all that in the chat now, and so folks have got things to connect with. Thank you so much.
Did anyone have any last questions for Rachel? Oh, there's lots of opportunity to ask away after the event. So thank you very much, Rachel Musson. And now would love to introduce Rachel Manning, who is the coordinator of the UK Sustainable Schools Network, and also with her, I think, as she
yes,
as well?
We've got Gabby, yes, a student.
Yeah, we've got Gabby, who, so as this is a student-led initiative, then really great to have you as a sort of youth voice today, Gabby, to kind of tell us a little bit more about the network. So Rachel, do go ahead. Welcome.
Brilliant. Can everyone see my screen okay? Amazing. That is a fantastic start. So yeah, nice to see everyone. My name is Rachel Manning and I'm head of youth networks at Global Action Plan. And I'm joined today, as we just said, by Gabby from London Schools Eco Network. So just to let you know, just from a slight safeguarding side from my side of things, Gabby is under 18 and is a student. So just kind of think about kind of what we're communicating just within this last bit of the session here. She will be talking about the work she's been doing in her network and how it links into UKSSN towards the end of this presentation. So I'm actually also based in Devon. So whilst kind of bringing this national perspective, I feel very connected to everything that happens in Devon, having already done a lot of work in Devon. I do recognise quite a few names here from my previous work at the University of Exeter, so it's great to see people again, albeit in a slightly different role, talking about the UK Schools Sustainability Network. And I think it's great to follow on actually from what Rachel was just talking about, and the importance of connection and connecting other people, because that is essentially what UKSSN is about. Just can't get my, okay. So the UK Schools Sustainability Network is part of the generation action work that we do at Global Action Plan. For those that don't know, Global Action Plan is an environmental charity working towards a green and thriving planet where everyone can enjoy happy and healthy lives within Earth's limits. We do this by mobilising people and organisations to take action on the systems that harm us and our planet. And we focus on the issues where the connection between the health of people and our planet is most tangible. So that's Global Action Plan as a whole. So the work that I focus on is the work that sits within our generation action stream of work. So at Global Action Plan, we are working with educators and young people to support their learning and action on climate change and sustainability, to create and drive momentum for change. But we do have a saying at Global Action Plan that not all education for sustainability has to be about sustainability. Within Generation Action, we're talking about supporting and developing all forms of youth social action, with the idea that if we can develop certain skills in young people, it all contributes to sustainability action. But the task for us is to develop young people's ability to create change and support educators to be able to nurture that desire to make change to support Generation Action. But who are Generation Action? Generation Action is a self-mobilised movement of young people who will soon be young adults. And the education system should be actively trying to grow Generation Action and include all young people within this idea of Generation Action. And the goal of our Generation Action work is that by 2030, every child should leave school prepared to take action collectively for the good of people and planet. And one of the things we're trying to think about within Generation Action is when we're talking about every child and every young person, it's actually how do we create and generate diversity and inclusivity in sustainability action, because one of the things that we've noticed through a lot of the research that we do at Global Action Plan, as I'm sure everybody knows, is that there is a certain type of demographic and stereotype that does fit into people who are taking action within sustainability and who can engage with sustainability action. So we're trying to make sure that the programs that we focus on can incorporate all types of young people from all types of backgrounds. And that is kind of what we focus on within UKSSN, and I'll come back in a bit to talk about how we do that through our programs. But through our Generation Action work, we are aiming to support students to grasp an understanding of the world through exploration using critical systems and relation thinking, care for self, others, and the planet, imagine an alternative future to use art, creativity, and design to craft and appreciate new visions, to be able to communicate this through words, media, art, dialogue, debate, and advocacy, and then act individually, but more often collectively for the good of people and the planet. These are the things that we believe are the ingredients of a good education, and they are based on a framework by Peter Sartorius. And they are the things that we believe that young people need to do, but most importantly, do things well. And at every stage of a project or program that we deliver within our Generation Action work, we always ask ourselves, how are we helping young people to improve on each of these 5? And it is a continuous dynamic and collective cycle that we use to lead to action and support young people to take action. So that's a bit of kind of background into Global Action Plan and Generation Action. So I'm going to focus on the UK School Sustainability Network now to talk about how this is one of the programmes that we're using to support Generation Action. So we're working with young people and educators directly. UKSSN is an element of our Generation Action work where we can support young people to grasp, care, imagine, communicate, and act. So UKSSN is here to help regional networks of people share and collaborate on ideas. So normally these eco committees come from different schools and they come together to support a region, to develop a regional network. And then that regional network can sit within UKSSN. And then we deliver activities, which I'll come on to in a minute. We have lots of different types of networks at UKSSN. So for example, we have the Devon and Cornwall network, which is hosted by Planet and People. We also have Chester Zoo that hosts a network. We also have Northumberland Council that hosts a network, as well as lots of different regional networks hosted by schools. We do have primary schools as well as secondary school networks. There is no limit really to the networks, regions and types of networks that UKSSN supports. The idea is through UKSSN, we want to help everyone connect and collaborate to bring everyone into this conversation. And the reason why we kind of have overlapping from different networks and areas and regions is that we recognise that different regions and areas have different priorities that they want to work on for sustainability or to take youth social action or a specific project that they want to work on in that area. So we don't worry about that crossover. We just want to be able to help everyone communicate and come together as a whole. So the idea is that we host and bring together networks that already exist or help networks develop, and then they come to UKSSN and we can help them collaborate and work on different projects. And the idea here is that learners rarely grasp, care, imagine, communicate, or act in a vacuum. The skills and abilities, aptitudes and values strengthen and develop through engagement with the real world and for engagement with other people. And UKSSN offers opportunities to engage with other people and develop these real world skills. So for example, to address an issue like the state of UK biodiversity, learners must understand the problem, so they must grasp the problem. They must be able to think compassionately, so they have to care. And they have to be able to think creatively, so they have to be able to imagine. And they must be able to engage with others effectively, so communicate. And then finally, have the skills to create change, to act. So we support and develop students through these networks to come together and be able to act on all of these. So through their involvement with UKSSN, students and teachers are developing critical personal, social and workplace skills. Crucially too, by coming together, they are gaining inspiration from each other and recognising they are not alone in wanting to tackle the climate and ecological crisis and take youth action. But we have a strong focus within UKSSN on communicating, acting and grasping. So those are the three we focus on specifically with UKSSN. I have animations, which I always forget about to underline them. So what do we do? How do we enable the development of these principles? So within UKSSN, we facilitate conversations and networking opportunities. So we have opportunities for all of the networks to come together and talk about what they're doing and talk about things that they're running and ask if anybody else wants to get involved with it. We provide advice and training for students. We also provide advice and training for network leads and teachers. We host a programme of inspiring talks and events, and then we also connect networks to upcoming opportunities that will support their needs as well. So the idea is that by providing these opportunities, we can allow projects to organically emerge, led by the interests of these networks. The focus is on creating opportunities from interactions between the UKSSN members at all levels. It helps the networks to connect with each other and develop diversity of thought. So one really interesting thing is we have a network on Guernsey, and we always get the thing that students, don't fly. We don't want you to fly. That's really bad. Which, yes, flying is really bad. But Guernsey students were saying to me the other day that actually they have to fly at the moment because in the winter their ferries get cancelled. So the only way for them to fly to mainland, to get to mainland, is to fly. So how do we communicate and kind of get this diversity of thought about what it means to live on a massively smaller island to what we live on and what sustainability means for them? So how are we bringing these youth voices together to help them understand? We don't have a predefined programme apart from the key events that we host throughout the year. The activities and connections emerge from bringing everyone together. It's to highlight the importance of working collectively, recognising that we're stronger as a whole educational setting to create leaders for sustainability. These are some of the examples of the things that have come out of UKSSN. So most recently, London Schools Eco Network created a petition to introduce carbon take-back obligations immediately. So then we share that round, and we've got a student meeting next week where the students who created this petition are going to talk about how they created it, how it was shared within a lesson, and then encourage other students to sign the petition. We also had Professor Alison Anderson from the University of Plymouth talk to the students about communicating the climate crisis and things to look for in mainstream media about what this might mean, and do certain events impact how the media talk about the climate crisis. We also had some students do joint review, book review of books, and we have climate coaching. So the things like the book review and the petition come out organically. We don't know what's going to happen. So what emerges is through the connections that create and how people talk to each other. And at the moment, we have an Enabling Youth Social Action course for teachers at the moment. The course is aimed at educators who currently work in a certain framework underneath free school meals. So it is very much for certain specific educators, but we are encouraging as many people as possible to apply, because it comes with a £250 bursary to facilitate youth social action projects in their school. It is aimed at school settings. So sometimes I will say, yes, okay, we can have all sorts of educators take part in and apply for this course, but it's specifically for teachers. But if we have more space, then we could maybe open it up to different types of educators. So that's on the teacher side of things. But UKSSN mainly focuses on bringing teachers and students together from different networks. So now we're going to hear from Gabby from London Schools Eco Network about some of the things that she has been up to. So Gabby, you just let me know when you want me to make me change the slides.
Okay, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Gabby, and I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for this great opportunity to share my experiences in youth eco networks. So my school was one of the first members of the London Schools Eco Network, or the LSEN, in 2019, which I joined around a year ago. And I also recently joined the UK School Sustainability Network, which was a great way for me to branch out and meet even more students involved in sustainability. So in my opinion, there are so many benefits as a student of feeling as though you're part of a wider eco network. Because often as young people interested in climate action, we can be told that our ideas are interesting but unrealistic. And being part of a youth network allows us to explore these ideas and get feedback from students, teachers, and other professionals in order to be able to implement them in our own lives, communities, and schools. So overall, youth networks for me are a great source of support and collaboration for students. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So firstly, I think that youth networks are a really great way to pool resources so that they can be shared with students across a city or an area. So often schools are reluctant or unable to invest in resources, especially if they're related to something outside of the curriculum, such as climate education, which means that individual schools often don't have sufficient resources for their students to be able to gain a really comprehensive understanding of climate change. And this is one of the reasons why student networks are often a great way for students to further their own knowledge of not only climate change as a whole, but also specific climate-related issues which are really relevant to us as young people. So an example of this was an amazing in-person LSEN session, which I attended last year at the London Academy of Excellence, which is a sixth form. And it was all about gaining carbon literacy, which is a general awareness of carbon costs of everyday activities, which allowed us to really effectively plan how we're going to reduce our own emissions on an individual basis and on a wider scale. So student members of the LSEN were able to attend this session, where we played a really interactive game altogether, which involved thinking about the potential carbon footprint of different activities and then ranking them before the answer was revealed. And it was a great way of enabling discussions between us students, and we were all able to learn a lot about our own habits. And that's the photo on the left is the card game. But often, since so much time and research goes into the science behind these games and resources, they can really be quite expensive. So student networks mean that they can be distributed and shared across schools quite easily, and that many more students can benefit from them. And individual schools also face less of a financial burden. So I think that in some ways, this also applies to speakers, which links to the opportunities that Rachel previously mentioned. Because by having a coordinated network of students who are all interested in climate and eco action, groups can really guarantee a great turnout of students and teachers alike, who are often extremely willing to engage with speakers and ask relevant, thought-provoking questions. I think that speakers also really recognize this interest when they agree to talk to student networks, and they're always extremely keen to engage with students who are interested in the environment. So a couple of weeks ago, as Rachel mentioned, I was able to co-host a webinar where Professor Anderson from the University of Plymouth gave a talk on communicating the climate crisis. So students and educators both attended the talk. And in my opinion, the mix of ages and roles, which was a result of the student network, led to really interesting questions for Professor Anderson about the role of environmental education in schools and how students can contribute to positive communication of the climate crisis. Online youth networks provide the unique opportunity for speakers to talk to students from across the UK and enable really interesting discussions of ideas after the talks and in later network meetings. This means that students definitely make the most of talks, and teachers can get ideas and advice for their own schools as well. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So as well as sharing resources, student networks are a great way to engage in stimulating discussions with other students and teachers, and you're able to share creative ideas in a supportive space. So just because everyone in these student networks is passionate about climate change, of course, that doesn't mean that everyone always agrees or constantly thinks in the same way. While of course, everyone's always respectful and considerate, exploring disagreements can be a way of broadening your own ideas and learning more about different ways of looking at the climate crisis. For example, we had an LSEN meeting where we looked at what youth action means to us and how we thought we should go about helping the environment. A lot of people disagreed on this issue, with ideas ranging from starting local projects to large-scale petitions to more radical protests. Discussions such as these help us learn more about ourselves and others and allow us to explore new ideas as well. Meetings are also a really great space to explore any ideas you might have for your school or wider area and to get constructive feedback from others as well as support. Learning about other people's projects often invites you to do something similar in your local area. For example, last year, after attending a meeting which discussed tackling food waste in schools, I decided to start a weekly notice board with one of my friends to advertise our school's food waste scores in a fun and engaging way. You can also get a lot of like-minded people, as Rachel mentions again, to show support for your projects or initiatives. So for example, the City of London School used the network as a space to advertise their new student petition, asking for a carbon take-back obligation, which meant that it got a lot more signatures in a really short space of time. So in the coming weeks, we'll be discussing COP28 and LSEN meetings, and this will be a great opportunity to get students involved in running mock COP conferences in their own schools. And this leads on to my last point about leadership. Thank you. So lastly, I think that relaxed informal student meetings really allow people to feel at ease and more confident with sharing their own ideas and projects, as well as joining group discussions. So student roles within the networks are really useful ways of building personal leadership skills, whether that be by leading a session, taking minutes, or even just contributing to a group discussion. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well, if there are any.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gabby. That was really interesting, and I think you did a way better job than I did at explaining the importance of networks. So thank you so much for coming along. If people want to see our website, there is a, you can type it in on the slide now, or you can just scan the QR code and that will take you to our website. There are a few things changing on the website. So if you go on there one day and then you come back a different day and it's updated, it's still the same place. We're just, updating things. So be aware it might change. But thank you very much for having us, and thank you, Gabby, for coming along as well.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to hear from both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of the NEED virtual conference. I think that was just a really fitting kind of end to the presentations, because it kind of brought in that UK-wide feel to get the national perspective, and also critically to have a kind of youth representative, I suppose, to kind of so eloquently talk about how large initiatives can really kind of impact communities with kind of proactive measures. I do think though, Gabby, there is loads of space for mad ideas. You know, this is a mad world.
Yeah.
I think what is great about sort of people who are younger is that it kind of, you've got fewer barriers and more possibilities. I mean, look at so Tom talked right at the beginning about the I can't remember what it was called, I think Air Diamond project, which was just kind of capturing carbon from the air and making it into diamonds. I mean, that is a mad suggestion, but it's pretty cool as well. So please keep exploring in a blue sky thinking way. It's not much needed.
Thank you.
So there's a couple of questions on the chat which I'll go forward to first. I did a little plug. Bethia is on this call, but she's been quiet. But the DCSSN, which is Devon and Cornwall Schools Sustainability Network, get that the right way around. DCSSN is ahead and going full steam with several schools across Devon and Cornwall. I think they meet every half term online. Oh yeah, Bethia's there. Speak for yourself, Beth. But Beth is really enthusiastic about this, and there's loads of really engaged kids. So if you have any schools that would like to be a part of it down here in Devon and Cornwall, then please do get in touch with her. I'm going to go back to some of the links. Here we go. Sorry, it's good to have so much stuff on the chat.
I did see a question which was asking if we have links with Fridays for Future movement. Yeah. We do have links with a lot of things, but one of the things that we're thinking about currently with UKSSN is our position politically and what that means for students wanting to take part. So it's whether or not we keep it as a politically neutral organisation, because some students or young people or people who want to get involved with UKSSN, sometimes if it's through a school or if we're hosting through a local authority, it's sometimes harder to kind of position us as somewhere that's kind of taking a role which is quite politically powered or something along those lines. So it's whether or not UKSSN stays as more of a politically neutral organisation, and then Global Action Plan as our host organisation does our advocacy and stronger activism work. So yeah, students do take part in things like that, but then we do think carefully now moving forwards how we ourselves as a whole, as UKSSN as a whole, align with it. But individual students might take part and feed back into what they've done, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Rachel. That's really clear. Okay, so Paul's got a question. Hi, Gabby and Rachel. Fantastic talk. I was just wondering, what is it that gives you both a sense of hope about the future? Both are clearly engaging and making such a difference. What do you think keeps you going the most?
Gabby, you go first with this one.
Okay, thanks. So I think, I mean, it's definitely quite easy to lose hope. And obviously, I know a lot of people can struggle with like eco-anxiety and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to, like, if you're feeling worried about like eco news or climate change and stuff like that, it's really important to take a step back and obviously like take care of yourself as well, but make sure that you're in a place where you can like really look at what's going on and like be able to make a difference. Because honestly, like panicking about it, you don't usually make such great a change if you're too busy worrying about it all the time. But I think definitely engaging with other students, and like which was facilitated by student networks such as the UKSSN and LSEN, that's given me a lot of hope, because also collaboration on that scale is just, it's really incredible. And you're able to have so many discussions with students of different backgrounds, but with that common interest of really caring about sustainability. And so yeah, it just gives me hope that like there is a generation of the future who's really looking to take care of our planet.
Oh, how brilliantly answered. Thank you, Gabby. Seriously. Rachel, over to you. You have to follow that now.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Gabby there, really. I think working with young people is one of the things that really gives you hope. So this morning I was on another event, which was an event that we run at GAP, which was talking about COP28 and how young people view COP28 and their hopes and priorities for it. And just listening to how well young people can articulate themselves, what they're trying to achieve, and they're actually doing it is really, really inspiring. And I think now, as someone who is kind of hosting UKSSN and leading UKSSN, what is really hopeful for me is that I can almost take a step back and let these young people do what they want and just support them and say, yes, and why don't we try this? And yes, and why don't we try this? And it helps them and it helps everyone together. Young people are often better than us at most of the things that we do. They have minds that can just go off on adventures, and they're not held back by maybe any kind of cynical kind of viewpoints that we might have. And I find that really inspiring. And being surrounded by these young people every day is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Enthusiasm of the next generation is absolutely intoxicating. And like you say, like we've had in workshops, there was one particular instance where there was a tiny smidge of a boy who, I can't remember what year he was in, but very young, who came to us and said, oh, I'd really like to do some litter picking on our on our field trips. And so we were able to kind of facilitate that, and we gave them litter pickers and said, okay, use these, but then pass them on to another school, and then that kind of facilitated it. But if that boy hadn't come to us, then it wouldn't have sort of gone any further. So there's a real, there is power in that for sure, and enthusiasm goes a long way to getting other people engaged. Okay, so what else have we got on here? Tom, Gabby, dying to know what you would like to be doing in future years in a more sustainable future?
Okay.
Big question.
So I'm actually quite undecided on what path I'm going to take. I mean, I've got A-level choices coming up and I'm still quite stuck. But I mean, I think in the future with like uni and then obviously getting a job, I mean, what's really interesting nowadays, which I think has changed in the last couple of years, is kind of the ability to find the sustainability element in loads of different careers or courses and stuff like that. So, I mean, engineering obviously is really, really cool, and like being able to build actual projects that make a difference, whether that's like the Sky Diamond that you talked about was incredible. But even like, I don't know, just I feel like you can really carve out your sustainability sort of corner in anything that you do. Like, for example, I don't know, I've heard about sort of investment jobs like finance, even, where I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when you say finance probably isn't sustainability. But even like I've heard of people who invest solely in really green companies, and they sort of fund like really amazing projects and ideas like that. So, I mean, I'm hopeful for the future as well.
Absolutely. I think I'm really excited for you because, you know, when I sound like a bit of an old cock now, but when I was, you know, I finished university and wanted to go into sustainability, there was really very little out there. And you know, unless you wanted to kind of be an ecologist or work in construction, sustainability wasn't really a word that was being thrown around. And yeah, in the last 15 years plus, and particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, things have just escalated. You only have to look at kind of job adverts to see that sustainability is a growing, emerging space and gathering at pace, which is exciting. So thank you very much for your answers. Who else have we got here? Libby, Rachel, can we signpost students to attend your webinars, etc., or does it need to be done through the school in a more formally structured way?
Yeah, so that's quite a good question, and at the moment we are changing how network membership does happen. What we encourage in the first instance is to look at our list of networks that already exist and then join one of those networks. If there isn't a network in your area, you can always come to us and say, oh, can I start a network? I see that there is a space here. Or so you can then do that. And then whoever has started that network gets information about the events that we run. It is also the case that if a network doesn't exist, if a student or educator sees that there isn't a network that exists, but they don't have the capacity to create one, then they can be added to our mailing list to receive information about the events that are upcoming as well. But if you go to that page, our key events, which are our big kind of headline events, there is an events page on the Transform Our World page where all of those events come up. But the student meetings and things we email out separately for safeguarding reasons. But I would say the best thing to do is just encourage people to email me to just chat what it is you want from a network, if there isn't a network, etc. But always in the first instance, look for a regional network and see if that exists for you, and then always drop me an email.
Yeah, and you're very lucky that you're in Devon and Cornwall because there is a network. So Jack,
yeah. So I did say that. So the Devon and Cornwall one is a primary school network. So we don't actually have a secondary school network. So if anyone is interested in starting a secondary school network, then that would be absolutely fantastic. One of the things that I am trying to do at the moment, we do have a lot of councils starting networks themselves now, which is quite interesting. And I'm trying to encourage that to happen more if people kind of come to us, particularly if it's a teacher saying, oh, why don't you talk to your local authority or council and see if you can do it together, because it takes a slight burden off the teacher if they can do it in a partnership and find it if there is a sustainability lead in the council to do the network together. So it's all just about seeing where we can make these connections. But yeah, if anyone would like to start a secondary network in Devon, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. It really would be. Sorry, I can't mute my dog. But there's I also wanted to, Gabby, just flag this. I'm going to put it in the thing. There's there was a campaign about making your money count, which was talking about actually sustainable investment and who you bank with can make a much bigger difference than you expect. I think it was something like 20 times more than I don't want to quote it, so look at the website, but it's something like 20 times more than, you know, stopping flying, going vegetarian, blah blah blah. So it really is impactful, and pensions, banking, investments, although people sort of snore a little bit at it, can actually make a big difference with very little effort. And here's a campaign about it. Yeah, I have a question for Gabby. You've got 50 or so environmental education practitioners here at your disposal. I wonder what advice you would give to us to kind of connecting with and sort of creating change within the younger generation in Devon. You know, what would your advice be? Where do you guys hang out? Who do you hear from? What is interesting to you at the moment?
Well, I mean, firstly, I guess social media is important, but again, it's not extremely necessary. But again, social media posts are a really great way of sort of getting into more mainstream news and stuff that young people do see. But at the same time, I think schools are the best way of getting proper information to students. And I think instead of making it like quite not aggressive, but instead of making it a sort of isolated message, like incorporating it into existing education wherever you can, which I know I recognize is easier said than done. But in Professor Anderson's talk, she mentioned even, for example, like in maths, like worded questions could be more focused on environmental issues, for example. Instead of someone buying 40 watermelons, they could install 40 solar panels and stuff like that. But I think just like engaging with teachers and finding students who are really interested, and I think really just like the act of getting together as students can be really like powerful for like generating change. That was quite broad, so if there are any more specific things you wanted to ask about, I'm happy to answer that as well.
No, thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot. I'm sure Rachel is cheering at the fact that you said schools, because that is exactly the right answer. I would say you're right. It's schools are a really good place. That's where people are kind of hopefully open and engaged and are willing to hear the message in a positive way, and hopefully feeling supported. Yeah, so that pretty much concludes our presenters, at least, for today. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this morning and listened to a whole lot of different speakers with slightly different angles and approaches. I'm sure all of us have learnt loads and loads. We officially have kind of 15 minutes left, but I think we have covered an awful lot. If anybody has any burning questions, then maybe we could just take the opportunity in the last 5 minutes to ask those, or to share about projects which you have particularly. But really, I just want to say thank you so much for all of our presenters and for you all. I think we've had 50 people engaged pretty much the whole way through, which is really good, especially for a long session like this. And then there were lots more that signed up, and I'll be circulating this after the event. But yeah, I just want to open up to kind of 3 questions. If you just want to put your hand up and speak, then that would be brilliant. Does anybody have any questions based on any of the talks or any of the themes that we've covered today, or would just maybe like to say something about what they're working on at the moment? Anna, to the group, do you think that engaging with teachers, students, organisations who are interested is enough? How can we challenge ourselves to reach those, for want of a better term, who couldn't care less? This is a really good one, and it's I'm really glad you touched on this, Anna, because there is definitely whole lot to be said for, getting out of the echo chamber. There is, we're constantly speaking in this space, but actually the theory behind this is that practitioners will get together in this network, feel supported, gain skills, gain ideas, share experiences, and then go out and use that knowledge in their communities, whether it's schools or businesses or other places of education for kind of lifelong learners. So, but I think, yeah, you're right. We need to kind of lean in to the fact that it's easy and safe and comfortable to stay in our echo chamber, and we need to kind of lean into the fact that sometimes it can be harder to reach other communities who are not engaged, and to remember that there are people who are far less engaged that we still need to kind of support. Thanks, Rachel. We've just posted a really good video, I expect. Thanks on how tipping points happen. Actually, only takes something like 1 in 5 to create a tipping point, so it's not as overwhelming as all that. So if we can get the low-hanging fruit and then a little bit more, there's some really good stuff that Rupert Reed does on the Climate Majority Project, which is, well, I think is branded now, but he always talked about the kind of moderate flank, which is the people in the middle who, they don't care a whole lot and they don't not care at all, but they're just sort of ambivalent, and those are the people that we kind of need to work on, and they exist everywhere. So it's important to engage with a whole range of different people. Sorry, just catching up on messages down here. Okay, so we've got Nikki. Find it difficult to get teachers involved. They find it hard to get beyond the mindset that all teaching has to happen in a classroom, and engaging with nature involves getting in a coach or minibus. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something which we all need to work on. I don't know if anybody else would like to chip in on this point about kind of getting or raising awareness about the power of outdoor education, and that, yeah, there doesn't have to be at great expense. Something which I really learned from was when I worked in the head office of the National Trust. I sat next to a chap who for many years was one of the people on the kind of bio team, so was surveying National Trust properties all over the country. And I asked him once what his favourite place to go was to kind of to see birds and kind of to do bird watching and stuff. And he said he had the best experience walking around the National Trust building at Helis, which is in the middle of Swindon, in a not green at all place, in a it's just off a kind of retail centre. I used to run at lunchtimes, and you had to run pretty far to get to any sort of green open space. And he said, just encircling this one building, he could count 50 species from just listening. And I was like, I've always kind of taken that seriously, because he was an expert, but actually, we've got the Merlin app, we've got loads of technology at our fingertips, and to know that actually there's something where you wouldn't expect it is a really powerful tool. So yeah, there we go. But yes, thank you everybody for being here. I think I will leave it there. There are loads of opportunities to go forward and connect with any of the people that were involved today. And if you would like to be a member of NEED, please do email beth.bird@devon.gov.uk. We do have monthly webinars. The next is with Dr. Sally Palmer at the University of Exeter, who will be talking about environmental education and how to kind of initiate it in school setting. So please do watch out for that. It will be this month, because it's December, it's the 12th at 12 o'clock. So hopefully that's easy to remember. But usually it's the last Tuesday of each month at 1 o'clock. But the next one will be Sally, 12th at 12 o'clock. And then in springtime, so we tend to, with Need, have 2 different events, one in spring, one in autumn. The springtime one, we're toying with the idea of a sort of skill share. So the steering group and I will be kind of talking about that and seeing what we can come up with in the spring. But for now, thank you for all of the work that you're doing. I shall be circulating this recording for you to pass on to others. Please do encourage lots of people to join the Need Network, because there's so much happening in Devon, and this is a really good platform for kind of joined up thinking. And also it's a really positive environment. Like some of the webinars just have a few people on them, some of them are bigger, and the conversation's always good value. I've always learned good things and connect with new people. I think that's all. Thank you very, very much for being here, and see you next time.